Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 241. My name is Colin Moriarty. Today I'm joined only by my second son, my younger son, Dustin Furman, executive producer of Last Stand Media. Chris is out on assignment. That's not true at all. Actually, he has an obligation right now when we're recording for his Creator Clash fight, which is coming up, I think in May or April, something like that. And so it's just Dustin and I today. Dustin, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. We are getting close to our live event. And I was thinking, I feel like we're probably similar in this way, and that there's some things that I'm like, this is stressing me out. I'm thinking about the presentation right now, in particular. And I have a thing that I know that this seems to be, maybe this is the procrastinator's way, but I feel like I've been slowly building it in my mind. And then there's like, you just got to start. You got to start putting it down. You got to start figuring out what that exactly is. Get all those loose ideas. But just jumping in initially, I always hate that. I hate that part. But I have started. And I'm already I don't know about most of it, but a significant amount in a very short amount of time. And I'm like, man, why did I stress out about this for so long? Because this is not going to be that hard. This is just how I operate, though, often. But
yes. So you're referring to our live show in Texas, February 24th, coming right up. I'm excited about it as well. I have a similar thing where travel just ruins my life for a little while. The event itself, I really authentically have no concerns about. I'm not worried about it. I think it's going to go just great. The audience is great. The content is easy to do. So like the execution of it is not a problem for me. And even the presentation, which I still have to do mine as well. We're doing the most overrated games of all time. And I have to do mine as well. I've selected my game, but I have to do my presentation. But I don't think, I'm not too worried about it either. The bigger worry for me is just traveling, because I hate traveling. And it's not anything that's really a big deal. I used to travel constantly when I was in media. That's kind of a reflection of that. I also just constantly traveled when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I think, as I've said before, it's kind of a reflection of my childhood and my experience, my nurturing or lack thereof experience, and just being pulled all over the place all the time. So I'm just on the move. And what's funny is that I haven't been on a plane somehow since 2019, which is stunning, because I would be on a plane no fewer than 20 times a year, probably, for most of my adult life up to that point. So,
I don't think I've been on a plane either, actually, I was on a plane in 2020 when I went to, I think, PAX East. And it was ironic because it was in March of 2020.
Oh, yeah, that was when it was all going off.
Right before, I remember we were there. We were in our Airbnb and we were like, oh, they just canceled GDC. Cool. Let's go to this giant event with thousands of people. We were fine.
Yeah, everything was fine. Don't worry about it. Nothing happened. All right. Welcome to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. We go up each and every week. You can get us 3 days early and ad-free on Patreon, like more than 12,000 of you do. Patreon.com/lastdaymedia. We could not do it without you. Though there are multiple support tiers, the most popular support tier by far is the $5 a month tier. For the cost of a PS4 game a year, basically, you get every episode of Sacred Symbols 3 days early and ad-free. That's 52 episodes. You get 104 episodes of Sacred Symbols Plus, which mostly don't come to live feeds. Plus, you get all of that same support for Defining Duke Ultimate, Knockback, Constellation, and so much more. We appreciate you. Couldn't do it without you again. And I really do thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I know that the economy is rough out there. Inflation is out of control. I think we obviously have a very myopic view of things in the United States in just many ways, but inflation's bad here, and it's nowhere near as bad here as it is in almost every other part of the world. So I do appreciate you guys giving us your support and allowing us to do this for you. So one of the things I said we get on Patreon, or you get, Sacred Symbols Plus. Sacred Symbols Cross Defining Duke just went live. That's a monthly sub-series we do with our friends at Defining Duke. I had Carolyn on from Limited Running Games. We've been doing our weekly reviews of The Last of Us, which are all going for nearly 2 hours, which is funny each.
Colin, I want to clarify something about the Last of Us shows, because this is a question we are consistently getting, is that if you're at the $1 tier, you do get access to those, but you get them on Friday. They come out Tuesday. If If you want them on Tuesday, that's the $5 tier.
Right.
So a lot of people and I guess it means it's good content because people are desperate to get it at those lower tiers. But worry not, those come out on Friday for the $1 tier.
Right. Come on in and sit down and let me tell you a little story, friends, about how it all works. The $5 tier, the whole business revolves around the $5 tier. The $10 tier is like our kind of more premium users. And then I would consider like our platinum users, the $25 tier. They get their special perks too, like Q&A, naming the credits and all that. But the big thing they get also is the $5 tier, all the perks like that. Everything revolves around the whole early ad-free audio. We give you the timestamps for the ads in the videos because we can't render them twice. We don't promise you ad-free video, but early video. And yeah, so you get at the $1 tier or the $2 tier, you get all the episodes of Sacred Symbols Plus. You just get them a little late. Freeloaders, scallywags, etc., don't get shit. That's the point. Mm-hmm. Except for whatever we put on YouTube, of course. Right. So we thank you for that. More spoiler cast and review discussions being spooled up. We'll definitely do one for Dead Space Remake. I think that will happen next week. We'll talk about that later in the show because I've beaten it twice now. And we'll do one for Hogwarts Legacy. We'll probably have Carolyn back for that. And we'll get that done probably after the live show in Texas. And then there are just a few other things that are coming out. Then PSVR 2, I'm sure we'll do one about PSVR 2. I'd like to get PSVR, what is it? PSVR Without Parole.
Yep.
On here. And then also I imagine we will do a spoiler cast and review discussion for Call of the Mountain. So a lot of great content coming up, plus all of our reviews for The Last of Us on HBO, etc., 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 etc. Sacred League has to go away just for a little while because there's no room for it. Sacred Sail Saga will continue, of course, unabated, since we're keeping score. Okay. Shiny Ryuji wrote in, said, "Hey boys, with the success of The Last of Us HBO show, will Last Stand be covering other PlayStation productions in the same manner you all do The Last of Us? I'm weirdly excited for the Twisted Metal show, having never played any of the games. I don't think so.
No.
I'm not saying the Twisted Metal show is going to be bad because it's probably going to be funny, but I think the runtimes are much shorter and I think it's more of a comedy. And so I don't think it's going to be quite as lore driven and emotional and all the things that The Last of Us kind of demands that sort of coverage. That said, let's say there are 12 episodes of the show in the first season. I could see us doing 3, maybe doing like the first 4, the second 4, the third 4. So no, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to be doing anything like that unless we watch it and it ends up being this revelatory thing. I mean, that's possible. I have no idea. I mean, that's totally possible. So we'll keep our mind open to it. The one thing I'm excited about though, Dustin, and I was skeptical about this with The Last of Us, was I was wondering if people were going to think it was too much coverage. And in fact, we've just seen one of the greatest months of growth in the entire history of our company when we started doing it. So the answer is obviously it was the right choice. But I don't know that people would be happy losing half of their Sacred Symbol or half their Sacred Symbols Plus episodes for 10 or 12 weeks for Twisted Metal.
Right.
I think everyone's happy, or most people are happy to do it for The Last of Us.
Yeah, well, and I think something to consider, Colin, too, is, well, I think that we will cover it in one way or another, obviously. But I was thinking, like, what if it totally sucks? Like, if we like pretty early on find out that it's really bad, I'm sure we'll do an episode talking about it. But I think this is one of those kind of just wait and see, like you've been saying. Maybe it, hopefully it's great.
Yeah,
anything's possible.
The people involved in it don't suggest that it's going to suck, to be honest.
Right.
And there's something about PlayStation productions that I think is got to give it a little bit. Got to give what's that guy's name? Kizelbash. Why can't I think of his first name? You know what I'm talking about? The guy, the head of PlayStation Productions, Assad Kizelbash, I think his name is something like that.
It sounds familiar.
We got to give him his credit because the reality is that Uncharted, and we said this before, Uncharted, pretty good. And The Last of Us on HBO, Emmy award winning, no doubt, when the time comes. So that's a high mark. I don't think Twisted Metal is going to hit that mark, but 2 out of 2, as far as I'm concerned. So there's no reason to think Twisted Metal is going to be bad. I don't think the Gran Turismo movie is going to be bad either. And we'll do obviously an episode about that too. Maybe we'll have a Z28 on for that. All right. Is there anything else to say before we get into the topic of the discussion? No, I don't think so.
Just there's still, I believe there are still a few tickets left for our live event. So if you want to go, they're up in the balcony. But from what we've seen, they look really great. Like it's going to be a good spot. So hopefully, I'm thinking, as we get pretty close, I'd imagine there's some people that are going to make some last minute decisions. Maybe a sellout, maybe not. We'll see. But either way, those are still available. Their link is down in the description on YouTube, so you can find that easily. And then just we still have merch. you'd like to check that out.
Oh, yeah. laststandmedia.store. We don't talk about that too much, but we just kind of sell merch in the background just every day. We appreciate that. Free shipping on stickers, of course, domestically. If you want things in the... By the way, I ordered a bong on...
hell yeah.
On grasscity.com or something like that. I haven't had a bong since... Yeah, I haven't
Such
had
a great name.
I know, it's awesome. I haven't had a bong since college. I had... I named it Oberon. I had this like blue... bong that when I moved, I obviously couldn't bring it with me. I gave it to my friend Abby, and I wonder where it is today. Maybe she still has it. I don't know. But I had a 311 "Don't Tread on Me" sticker on it. I remember it very well. And so anyway, I was like, I like smoking joints. I have medical marijuana. It keeps me nice and calm. My anxiety and stress are through the roof. I have a hard time sleeping. All the rest. I think you guys know that. Wound up like a top. You know what I mean, Dustin?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So I have the medical marijuana, and what I typically do is I vape. And I also smoke a few joints a day. And I would like to cut down on the volume. It's not really a big deal. Actually, medical marijuana is cheaper than illegal marijuana. I mean, it's like, and it's better. It's hysterical. Like we were paying $350 an ounce on the illegal market in college for shit. And you couldn't even spend that much on an ounce of the best weed. So it's hysterical how things have changed, even with inflation, even with time having passed or whatever. So I was like, well, I'd like to kind of cut down on the flour just a little bit. What can help me kind of get into that state, get ready for bed? Because I smoke at very specific times. I smoke before I eat dinner. I smoke before I go to bed. And usually I have like one joint just to like relax, bring myself down after a long day's work. But I'm like, what if I can replace like one or two of those with just some bong rips? So anyway, I went on grasscity.com and I bought this Aurora bong. I've always wanted a Aurora bong. My friend had one, ROOR. My friend had one in college. They're expensive, like tempered glass bongs. But when I went to their website, everything was sold out. Like they weren't selling anything. So I had to go to grasscity.com. And then this thing is shipped. I had no idea what was going on here. It ships from the Netherlands. But then it ships to Germany. And then it goes back to the Netherlands. And then it falls off of this like weird third-party tracking system. And then yesterday, appears at my front door.
Whoa.
Like that.
Now, Colin, you said you're a bit of a lapsed bong user. Have you ever tried? I have a friend who used to do this all the time. I can't remember what it's called. It's like you get the weed concentrate that looks like a booger practically.
Oh yeah,
and
dabbing or whatever.
Yeah, dabbing. He had a blowtorch, and he would like get the glass real hot and then like swirl it around and
that's like the.
It looked like hard drugs.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
What do you got going on over here?
That's too much. Like when you need the torch and you're like, it looks like you're smoking crack. Like that's probably that's probably when you're going too far. I mean, no, there's like all sorts of different ways. Flour actually is like one of the least popular ways to smoke or to ingest weed these days. Right. People love vaping, and people love edibles. I'm fine with edibles, but I'm looking for more instantaneous, short burst relief. So anyway, I have this. I don't know why I told that story, but I have this bong. And it works great. It's now, do I feel like I'm back in college? Yes. Am I too old for one? Absolutely.
Dude,
but yeah.
You mentioned edibles. There's a story that recently happened to me. Stop me if I told this on the show. I accidentally drugged myself over Christmas break. So Holly in my stocking, she was with her friend a few weeks before Christmas and got some caramel CBD. CBD caramels, right? Mm-hmm. Or caramel, as Colin
caramel, as the normal person would say.
Yeah, whatever. So I just thought, she got these at the CBD store. You know, she was like, oh yeah, I just picked these up. No big deal. Like, and by the way, for people outside of Pennsylvania, weed is not legal recreational here. It is only legal medically here. So you can't just walk into a dispensary and get something. Well, I ate one over Christmas break and I thought, oh, this edible ain't shit. Just not really. I didn't expect anything because I've had CBD stuff and, it's nothing. You're not supposed to feel anything really with CBD. Well, about an hour and a half later, we decided to get Chinese food and I have to go pick it up. I'm driving home and I'm like, man, I kind of feel like I'm like floating in this car right now. And I started to feel like panicked because I'm like, what's going on with me? I'm like, I am very high right now. And I don't know why, because I didn't even think about the fact that I ate the CBD caramel. And then I get home and I look at the wrapper on the caramel and it said that it had like 10 milligrams of Delta 9 THC in it. Which I can't believe that they figured out some fucky way that it's legal. And I don't know, maybe for someone like you that's more seasoned would eat that and feel nothing. But man, I was full. I mean, the Chinese food was amazing. Let me tell you. After that, but yeah, I told Holly, I'm like, what are you doing? What are you buying me that you inadvertently drugged me without realizing? You know, it's quite the experience.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that happened to you.
Oh, it was fun now in retrospect.
Yeah, in retrospect, it's fun.
Except for the driving part.
Yeah, I don't know. So it's funny with CBD, you get something called the some people get something called the entourage effect, which is like how CBD works. And it's like so for people that don't know, THC and CBD are the two kind of important components, that cannabidiols, I think they're called. Or CBD is cannabidiol and THC is whatever the fuck it is. And CBD is kind of the thing that calms you down, and THC is the stuff that gets you fucked up. And they both have a use and a place. In Virginia, it's interesting because I have a medical card here. It's been legal medically for a while, but it's actually legal recreationally here as of January 1st, but there's no way to buy it. So it's like this like weird state legislation catch-22 where like a previous legislature set this thing into motion, and then the new legislature was like, well, we're not going to actually make it so that you can sell the weed. So it's this weird situation. So I guess theoretically you can go to Washington, D.C. or something where it is legal and buy a T-shirt and then get weed with it, which is how you buy weed in Washington, D.C., in case you didn't know.
Dude, they got all kinds of weird stuff in D.C. You can get like a psilocybin chocolate bar there. Yeah,
psilocybin should be legal, too. It is in Oregon, I think, and maybe one or two other places like Washington or New Hampshire or something.
Yeah.
But I haven't done that in a long time. You want to fucking go crazy?
Honestly, I mean, I'm intrigued by it, but I feel it scares me, the thought of trying it. It seems freaky, but I don't know. I've never been in the situation to even consider it. So
yeah,
maybe I would, though. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I have to say is, you accidentally got drugged. I've talked about the story about how I accidentally smoked opium once. And that was fun.
Yeah.
That was
horrifying.
Sure. It was horrifying.
Oh, yeah.
It was weird. I could still taste it, still smell it. I'm like, oh my God. What do they call it? Chasing the dragon?
Chasing the dragon, man. But here's the thing. You look back at, I mean, obviously it was scary at the moment, but now it's kind of a funny story.
Oh, it's definitely funny. Yeah. It was funny almost immediately, really. It's just, I'm pretty militant about not, like, I don't want to do certain things, right? Like I've never done coke. I don't want to do anything like that. I don't want to do kind of opium's natural, but I don't want to, I don't know. I just want to do hard drugs. So that was more of like a betrayal where I was like, fuck, I don't want this shit in my system. I don't do this kind of thing. I don't care about pot, but everything else is like, I don't want. So that was more of like a betrayal, but I don't think anyone did it intentionally. It was just in a hookah that I smoked thinking that like a normal hookah would be full of tobacco and or weed. But no, that wasn't the case. All right, my friends, let's talk about a few things before we get into game discussions here. James Ketchum wrote in and said, Colin, how are things with the Keebler Elves these days? Did you forever give up on the EL fudge or succumb to its changes like a good consumer? The Gamer Battalion still stands ready to carpet bomb the Keebler Forest in Operation Stand Down. No, I've abandoned Keebler entirely. They fucked the Keebler cookies up, and then after a few months, they went and fucked the fudge stripe cookies up. They just did that as well. So I was like, well, I'm sure most people, well, I'm not so sure. Here's the thing. How can you eat these cookies? Like, how is it you go to the supermarket every week or every 2 weeks and you pick up a thing of Keebler Elves off the shelf and you do this for years, right? Then suddenly they just straight up change everything about it. And they just think you're going to continue to buy it. I guess some people do, but I can't imagine doing that with anything. What? It's like buying Wonder Bread, right? And then it's like a totally different product. It's like, no, Wonder Bread is Wonder Bread. That's what it is. It's Wonder Bread. Otherwise I'm not buying it. Because then it's just another wheat bread or white bread. I don't understand this. I'm perplexed by it. Yeah,
I'm trying to remember when the changeover, was it taste related or was it like cost saving measures?
No, I mean, I think it was cost. It was certainly cost saving measures. Like you get to know the dimensions of the box, the way the cookies feel. I knew immediately opening. I was like, "There's all right, something's different about this." The whole insert was different, and the cookies were smaller. The cookie was made of a different material. I was like, "This is fucking horrible. It sucked." And I tasted it. It's not like I just threw them away. And I was like, "This is a disgrace." But I have a new thing to complain about. Now,
bring it. Let's hear it.
I'm a pretty old school fan of Honey Bunches of Oats with almonds.
Oh, with almonds. Okay.
Almonds. I love almonds. Mm-hmm. And just as a quick aside, we have a BJ's just opened, like a Price Club in my, like right in my area. And so we joined, and I fucking love that place. I used to love that place when I was a kid too. It's such a great, it's just American capitalism in a store. It's like all the beauty of America. Yeah. All the, like our just capitalistic wonder. But I was thinking, I'm like, I see like families walking around that place because we can only do so much damage at BJ's. So we're not going to buy like huge things. But I'm like, we got to have kids just so we can get the savings going at BJ's. Buy the 1,000 count French toast sticks, buy 40 eggs at a time, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So that's like a whole thing with that. But so I bought almonds. I bought walnuts at pistachio. How do you feel about pistachio nuts?
Oh, I love them, dude. They're great. It's a little annoying. Do you get them shelled or?
No, I get them in the shell because I feel like the nut, they call it the nut meat. Oh, and I feel like that's too easy. You shouldn't get to eat pistachios that easily. You got to earn it a little bit.
I got to be honest. I'm hung up on the nut meat.
Yeah, that's what they call it. The nut meat.
The nut meat.
That's what it's called. And so we have all of these things going, but one of the things I like to buy there is the Honey Bunches of Oats with almonds, like the double pack. And dude, I'm telling you, I've been eating this cereal probably. I feel like I remember when it came out. I think I was in like middle school, maybe or late elementary school, and we were into it. And I'll tell you right now, there's one almond, like a single almond in every box. Like where I am so tempted to just dump this shit out and just show how few almonds. The slivers, almond slivers, of course, in the box of cereal. It's infuriating. What is happening? It's not called Honey Bunches of Oats with almond, and you just get one almond. It's Honey Bunches of Oats with the almonds. Like the assumption is that there's multiple almonds in this. So I'm basically just eating Honey Bunches of Oats, but I'm paying the Honey Bunches of Oats with almonds cost, and they're not giving it to me. And I fucking love almonds. I don't care how bad they are for the environment. I don't care at all.
Yeah, they take a lot of water, I hear.
Yeah, they're horrible for the environment.
Right. Now, see, I respect the Honey Bunches of Oats with almonds. I've had it, and I think it's fantastic. I am a classic man, though, where I prefer the OG Honey Bunches of Oats. So I don't have quite the level of experience that you do, Colin, but at what point do you take matters into your own hands where you just buy classic Honey Bunches of Oats and then you buy like some sliced whatever shade almonds, and then you are in control.
That's true, because I love just snacking on nuts.
Yeah, you do.
I eat my one meal a day, and then I usually have like a dessert afterwards, like in the next hour or so. So I'm going about 22 hours a day without eating, and usually it'll be like that's when I'll have like a couple of donuts, perhaps, if I'm going crazy with it or whatever. But often I just get a mug of like cashews or whatever. So I actually went down the baking aisle of BJ's and got the huge 2-pound bag of walnuts and the huge 2-pound bag of almonds, and I'm just mixing them up and eating them by hand, raw, of course. Raw almonds are the best.
Always going raw.
Gotta go raw.
Yeah.
Gotta go raw. I don't know why we got on this topic. Chris isn't here to help reel us in, although I don't think that's real. Oh, it's because James wrote in. So yeah, why would you make a product and then change it? That's my whole question. And why would you buy a product religiously and then they change it and you just keep buying it, even though it sucks dick? And I want to be clear, the New Yale fudge sucks dick. And only if you don't think that's a good thing. If you think sucking dick's a good thing, which is fine, think of some other thing that it is. It's bad. Grainy. Cookies. It's all fucked up. And then they did it with the fudge stripes, dude. See, I thought the fudge stripes were my respite.
Right. Your safe haven.
But they were just getting to it, in some sequential order, I guess.
Yeah, it's unacceptable, really. But here's the thing. I mean, maybe we should leave it at this, Colin. I don't know. I mean, we can talk as long as you want, but what's more scary? The fact that the recipe changed, not just for one, but 2 cookies, or the fact that this is just come and go and the world has moved on.
Yeah, it's like the world doesn't care. When it happened, I was like searching social media for it for like a week, and people were complaining about it, but I don't. Yeah. And I'm sure if you follow some sort of consumerist like thing, maybe there are pieces about it and so, and maybe they fixed it, but I doubt it. These are moves that are made to save money, and it's a damn shame. I like the old reliable standbys. It's why brands become brands to begin with. Mm-hmm. So no, fuck Yale Fudge. We can carpet bomb them if we want, but I feel like it's just a waste of resources, to be honest.
Yeah.
Liam Wilson wrote in and said, hello, big boys. I'm coming over from sunny old England in April to attend my brother's wedding in North Carolina. We are flying into Washington and driving down, and since my parents are now old as dick, they suggested we stop over for the night in Richmond. It clicked immediately that this is the sacred site where our benevolent Colin resides. So I figured I'd ask what your recommendation would be to take my parents out for dinner. As always, thanks to all of the team for the endless stream of podcast heroin being injected into my veins each week.
Why?
Thank you, Liam. That's a big, I mean, you could easily do Washington and North Carolina in a day, but that's a pretty long drive. So your first task is going to be getting out of Washington, D.C. alive. And that in and of itself is going to be a tough thing. Then you're going to have to go through or around Baltimore and see if you survive that. Once you're clear of Maryland, smooth sailing all the way down to the Carolinas. Now, here's the reality. I don't live in Richmond. We kind of say that sometimes because it's just the easiest thing to say, but I live in the suburbs, like 30 to 40 minutes outside of Richmond to the south. So there's great food in my area that I would recommend to you, but you're not going to be in my area, I don't think. The one restaurant, it's kind of a well-known spot, but it's called the Tobacco House or something like that. Let me look. Richmond Tobacco Company on Carey Street in Richmond. That's a great restaurant. Multiple stories, good Americana, good vibe, good cocktails. If you want to come more into the suburbs, though, there's a place called Taza, Tazza, that we like to go. And there's a small, there's a few of them, but there's these like upscale-ish restaurants called the Boat House that we really like to go to too. Good food, good drink. But those aren't in Richmond. So
Colin, you'll have to travel out. What about the barbecue place?
Oh, Q Barbecue. Yeah, but that's not... Q Barbecue's awesome. That's on Hull Street, kind of in my neck of the woods. It's really good, but you would assume they want to go to like a sit-down restaurant, not a... Although they're coming over from England, I mean, that is kind of one of the food styles of the South. So
yeah,
don't forget to drive on the right side of the road, like the correct side of the road, which also is the right side of the road.
Correct. Yeah. I've always wondered that, how people, if you're going from one side to the other, I feel like I couldn't even possibly drive on the other side of the road without my brain promptly dying.
Yeah, I've thought about that too. My dad has talked about that, like when he's gone to Europe, and he's like driven all over Europe. And I'm like, wow, nice. That's intense. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. Okay. What else? Well, Liam, have fun in North Carolina. Beautiful state.
Enjoy freedom over here. While you can.
You won't want to leave.
Yeah.
Ian wrote in and said, hey, punkheads. I write in today about the Hogwarts Legacy controversy. And by that, I mean the LSM Discord shortening the game's name to Hogleg. I cannot stand this, and I find it maddening how our language is continually eroded by newer, dumber words on a weekly basis. Combine Hogleg with Dustin's shortening of Constellation to Stelly, and you've got a recipe for what the fuck is going on here. To all Hogleg and Stelly users, stand down. I agree. I hate it. I hate them all. And we'll talk much more about Hogwarts Legacy later on when we talk about what we're playing. But in the meantime, did we make this up, or is this being called this somewhere else?
So... the earliest time that I recall seeing Hogleg was in the timestamps for defining Duke.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's the origin, and I don't know if it was said on the show or if Ben wrote the timestamp. And maybe Ben is the origin. I don't know. I mean, it could be Ben, it could be Maddie, or maybe they heard it elsewhere. But the Hogleg thing I didn't like initially. Which this is how these things normally are. You see some kind of shortening, you're like, oh, that's dumb. And then you maybe say it ironically once or twice. And then you just kind of start saying it. Now, Stelly, on the other hand, Stelly works as far as I'm concerned. I just can't. I told you guys a week or two ago, Holly and I call Chipotle Chippers. I can't resist changing a name of something like that to something more stupid and fun. And so, as far as I'm concerned, Stelly is here to stay.
I have to sneeze.
His body is rejecting Stelly.
Excuse me. Yeah, it was casting it out. I hate Stelly. I hate it. I don't know what to say about that.
You made it worse now.
Yeah.
Now Stelly's definitely here to stay. Now that you said that.
Well, why do you guys want to all irritate me? Is it that fun? I guess it is. What else is there to talk about here? Let's see. We scroll back up. Why am I scrolled so far down on my document? I have no idea. Oh, okay. Bunny Slayer wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC. So my best friend and I started working at the same job for a few years back, but since then I've moved up to management and am now his boss. This felt weird at first, but since he's such a great worker, it's never been an issue. However, he recently started dating a coworker and asked if he could bring her to one of our smoke sessions. My instinct was to say, of course, but then I thought about it. I probably shouldn't be smoking with my subordinates. I only let it slide with my friends because we've known each other for over 10 years. Colin, would you and have you gotten high with your coworkers, specifically those ranked lower than you on the corporate ladder? And is it unethical to get high with your employees? My job and livelihood hinges on you giving me the proper advice. You shouldn't take any advice from me. I think a lot of it depends on the state you're in, whether it's legal or not, because then you're all kind of doing something illegal. Of course, you're not compelling someone to do it as well. But the answer, though, is that when I first started as a full-time employee at IGN, I was already smoking weed every day, but I tried to keep it as hidden as possible for a long time. People knew after a while, but from the audience and from like the bosses and all this, I don't know why. I didn't want to be looked at in any different way. But as I got older and more comfortable, it loosened up a lot. And I mean, at IGN, people used to get stoned at like the company retreats at, E3. I have a lot of memories of those kinds of things. I remember being at a company retreat with some of the video guys, like smoking a bong or something in one of their hotel rooms. That was like in 2014 probably. And a lot of the bosses there did smoke. And San Francisco, I mean, that's just the vibe. In fact, and I'm sure I said this before, but when I got hired there, I asked if I was going to get drug tested, and they laughed at me and said that they wouldn't be able to hire anyone if they drug tested people. And this was a person from Fox, not from IGN. It was like one of their recruiters. So yeah, I think you have to kind of, it's a lot of different, you haven't given me nearly enough information, and ultimately this is something you have to decide for yourself. But I think most people understand that the vibe with weed is mellow, that it's not really that big of a deal, but it could still be illegal and looked down upon in the area that you're in. And you have to be careful about that.
Colin, I think you're right. The key thing is the legality. You wouldn't want, if you don't know this person very well and they have some kind of dirt on you, supposed dirt, that they could, say like, oh, well, that he was smoking illegally or something, like that wouldn't be good. But it is funny. This writing made me think of the fact that you got to wonder how often company parties that include alcohol go bad, or like there's some kind of incident, somebody says something drunkenly that ends up getting them fired, or something gets exposed.
I had a bad experience at a holiday party.
Dude, it probably happens all the time, which obviously, I don't know. I don't think weed really makes your inhibition as far as like what you say and do necessarily go away.
I don't think so. I mean, it could, if you mix and spin, then that can be disastrous. That's when weed plays a really dangerous role. That's why I always try to, you just got to choose one or the other in my opinion when you're doing it. I don't, or be moderate with both. But the first IGN holiday party I ever went to, 2007, it was IGN, MySpace, and a bunch of other companies that Fox owned, and I got fucking trashed.
Woo!
And I like passed out outside the venue. I had to get like carried back to a guy named Michael Thompson who used to work with us, his apartment. I woke up the next day. I tried to quit because I was so embarrassed, and they're like, "You can't quit. It's no big deal." I was like, "All right, cool." So yeah, it happens. Be careful out there. I think drinking is so much more dangerous.
Yeah.
But you got to choose your own vices. You're all adults. You can do whatever you want. And finally, before we get into the news, Ben Sharma wrote in and said, "Hi, Sacred Crew. So Chris has been playing Hogwarts Legacy and with his rolling name, Dominic Rice and Bean, which typifies the great sensitivity to cultural knowledge and outreach that Rowling exhibits in her books with Cho Chang and Kingsley Shacklebolt. What would your rolling names be in your Hogwarts Legacy playthrough, Colin and Dustin? Surely you've thought of some fun ones by now." I don't know. I didn't know that was like a thing, actually, in Harry Potter.
Right. Yeah, that is. I've always thought that some of the names were kind of weird. But the thing is, so first of all, which we'll talk about Hogwarts Legacy later, I just named my character my own name because I wanted it to be the role-playing fantasy of it. But when I read this question and I was trying to figure out like what names I could do, which there's nothing quite like Chris obviously has the Puerto Rican aspect where he can kind of play off that. But I'm like, what? I don't have anything like that.
Yeah. What are you?
I don't know. I'm American.
Yeah.
Like pretty purely. Like I've talked to my parents. I'm like, oh, you're French and German and both, like all these different things. I'm like, well, okay, I'm kind of just a mutt then, I guess, which is fine.
We're removed enough now. You've been here for a while.
Right. So the only things I could come up with were like vulgar, like I wrote down Richard Cummings. Like, what if that your name in Hogwarts Legacy or something like that?
I like the Dominic Ricin bean. It's pretty good. It's very sensitive. I like how he spelled rice, R-I-C-I-N, like ricin, like the actual chemical ricin. Yeah. But that would kill you. But yeah, I guess I got to think about it. I haven't. We'll talk about this game in more depth in a little while. I have not played it yet, so no idea what I'm going to do. But soon. All right, my friend, let's get into the news as it stands. A few things to get into before we get into what we're playing and the bigger news items that we want to get through this week. And we start with word out of Naughty Dog. This actually happened right after we recorded last week, so we couldn't include it in the last episode, but we have to record it here just to make sure the record is clear. The Last of Us Part 1, which is the remake of the 2013/2014 PS3/PS4 release of The Last of Us, which came to PlayStation 5 in September, was due out on PC on March 3rd, I want to say. Now it has been delayed to March 28th. So you can look forward to that. Just a few weeks to polish. They released a statement on their various feeds if you'd like to. You didn't play The Last of Us Part 1 on PS5, right?
No, not yet. I'd like to, but I haven't yet. Now, I saw some tinfoil hats out there, and I didn't do the lay it out in my head, but some people speculated that this delay has more to do with waiting till the show is over in order to try to capitalize on the show being over and getting more sales.
Yeah, maybe.
Which, I mean, it could be that. Maybe they just do want a little more time to polish it up. PC ports are been in a bad spot the last few years, it feels like. So maybe they just want to make sure everything's good to go.
Yeah, it's so strange to hear about that, and see that happening over and over again. And like you discussed last week with Dead Space, PC gaming was supposed to be so. I mean, it is obviously viable and popular, but it just there's so many false starts with it. It hurts itself over and over again. I think it's because of the dynamic nature of the machines. I mean, I think that's fairly obvious.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
All right. So March 28th for The Last of Us Part 1 on PC if you're interested. And it could be one of those things where they're splitting the difference. There could be a marketing angle to it. And then Naughty Dog's like, yeah, we could use the time anyway. So that's fine. And then they just use the time that they were otherwise going to use it to patch or whatever. So please look forward to that. I can't wait to see the various horrible things people do to that game on PC. And Guerrilla reports that Firesprite Games' Call of the Mountain, the Horizon launch game for PSVR, is gold. So it'll be ready for launch, no doubt. What is that, February 22nd, I want to say? Something like that.
Pretty dang soon, yeah.
What are your thoughts? How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm excited. I'm very excited. I did the pre-order bundle that comes with this game, and I'm more and more excited as the days go by, just thinking about the whole lineup. When you actually sit and think about it, there's a lot of like really cool stuff. Specifically, obviously this game, the fact that GT7, the entire game, is playable in VR. It's not a VR mode. The only thing you can't do in GT7 apparently is split screen mode, which makes sense, but everything else totally on the table for VR. And then the sleeper hit is of course Resident Evil Village in VR, which is also fully playable. And I don't know. I don't know if it's just that the marketing specifically for that one hasn't been there, or if I just haven't seen it. But I'm like, man, Resident Evil 7 VR, when PSVR came out, was such a big deal that sold so many systems. You'd have to imagine that this one could do the same thing if the quality's there. And so, and also that's a free update. Both GT7 and Resident Evil, both free updates, which is totally awesome, because those, like, doing an entire VR mode isn't just as easy as like changing a couple things. They take a ton of work. Those are the type of things that I'd be okay paying for is an update like that. But the fact they're giving it for free, I mean, I'm not going to complain about that either. But it's it's coming up soon. I just saw, obviously, right now, press are starting to get it. I saw Gene Park, our friend, got it in recently, so people are going hands on. So we're going to start to see more impressions come, and
face
then
on.
Of course, face on,
perspective on, eyes on.
And then of course, I think I'm getting it, and you're getting it. I don't think Chris is, but we'll be doing stuff about it for sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely be covering it. So yeah, expect that. Call of the Mountain will be the first game I play for sure on it as well. I got the bundle too. It's coming. So our live show is the 24th. So this is going to be coming when we're basically leaving. So that's too bad, but that's just the timing as it works out. It'll be something to look forward to when we get back. Actually, the 22nd, so the Wednesday. Actually, so we'll get it. Maybe be able to fuck with it a little bit before we go. Is the show on a Friday?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And then we leave Saturday. That's right. I forgot about that. We're actually we're not gone for very long.
Well,
it's like 48 hours.
I think I'm staying an extra day.
Oh, just to do shit?
Yeah, just since I've never been. So.
Oh, okay, cool. All right. So yeah, Horizon, Call of the Mountain from Fire Sprite and Gorilla, I guess. February 22nd, PlayStation VR 2. We'll have more information on that when the time comes. Wanted to get your take on this. Video Games Chronicle, our buddies over there, report, as many have, that the Nintendo Switch has officially outsold the PlayStation 4 at 122.55 million units sold. It passes PlayStation 4 at 117.2 million. It's important to note PS4 is not static. It'll still sell probably several million more, but I doubt it will even reach the current number that Switch is at now at 122.5. So now it's got its sights on PlayStation 2, and I wanted to get your take on what you think about this. So what are you're a Switch guy, Stinky Switch. This is an incredible success story, I think, and really goes to show that though we're more in a realm of power in PlayStation 5 or on PlayStation 5 and certainly on Xbox and PC, there's a place for a mass market accessible machine largely driven by one publisher and its games. And it's just a uniquely Nintendo thing. And Micah and I were talking about it, and I was like, well, part of me always feels like they should be worried about alienating their developer and publisher partners by having hardware that just needs new versions of games. Like Call of Duty will be coming, right? And we know that based on the agreements, should this deal go through. Just like the Wii era, they're going to have to build a whole different set of games for the machine. And I don't know that that's ideal, but then you look at it and you look at all the games they sell. And last year, 9 of the top 10 selling games on Switch were published by Nintendo. When Nintendo sells a game that sells conservatively 10, 20, 30 million units. So it's like they almost don't need anyone else. It's a very interesting machine. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this sales milestone?
Yeah, I think that they really were able to figure out something really special with the idea of the hybrid nature of the console. I think that that's one of the things that makes it so appealing to people. And it's funny too, we talk about on this show how if maybe Vita was orchestrated a little differently, or maybe it was a different time, that it could have done a lot better, because it's clear that handhelds are alive and well based on the success of both the Switch and the Steam Deck. But it's funny now in that I've seen I'm trying to remember the quote, but it was one of the executives at Nintendo said they were in uncharted territory for the Switch, just because it's really hard to tell what they're doing right now, because in some ways they're ordering more Switches. So they plan to sell a lot more of them. But at the same time, it kind of feels like they're slowing down in some ways as well, which I just wonder if they're going to try to have like a more powerful Switch that lives alongside the standard Switch in a year or two or something like that. But it's obvious that despite the fact that there's a power, or I guess what we consider a power issue, it's really not an issue for them. And in fact, for the most part, when people play Nintendo first-party games on Nintendo Switch, they aren't complaining that it's bad, or it's like low frame rate or something like that. Now, to be clear, there are absolutely exceptions, and I think the number one glaring one is Pokemon. I think that the problems with that game go well beyond the Switch, but you see Nintendo really understand what the power of their console is, what it's good at and what it's not good at, and really build their games around the hardware. And that's made them extremely successful so far. And it's clear that they're going to have another really big hit with the new Breath of the Wild or the sequel to Breath of the Wild this coming May, which did you see a lot of people are upset about the $70 price tag?
I did.
On that too, which I just think is silly.
Yeah, I think it's silly too. I don't. What don't people get? This is getting to the point of hard-headedness, I think. Pay what you want for your games. I mean, or buy or don't buy whatever you want. But if you don't understand the necessary increase in pricing, then you really don't understand game development or economics. And not in a deep way, but not in any way. It's like, that to me is just so strange. It's why people were complaining, like the jump from $50 to $60. I'm like, guys, just natural inflation will bring these numbers up. Not to mention how much money it costs to make these games. What don't people get about that? I don't know. So seeing Zelda at $70, it's like, well, dude, Breath of the Wild came out in 2017. And just the monetary situation is different. Nonetheless, the difference in cost, I don't know.
It's really easy to lay this out. I did the math. We were talking about this. I did a random one-off stream for the Nintendo Direct because a lot of people in my chat were upset by the $70 Nintendo price tag. And here's the thing. I don't want to defend Nintendo, especially their corporate practices, because they absolutely fucking suck most of the time. But $60, 2017, put that in an inflation calculator to right now. Guess what? $72. 72. So really, your Switch games through inflation have gone down in price till now, where now they're readjusting, and it's even technically slightly cheaper when you consider inflation. Don't get me wrong, I understand the external factors, like some people's wages haven't gone up with inflation, and that sucks. I understand that. But if you look at the numbers of the inflation calculator, it's like, I don't know how you can't see that it's like, yeah, this game is actually technically, for how much the dollar is worth, slightly cheaper than the last Zelda game.
Right. That's the whole point, is that it's only keeping up maybe with inflation. That's why I had noted that there might be some regret in not even going higher than 70, because it's going to be hard to increase from there again. With the economic realities as they are, games are still... First of all, let me back up. Games are costing too much to make. Some games are. Like Callisto Protocol's budget was insane compared to what it was. And that needs to get tamped down. But expectations are also growing mightily. And recent releases show that expectations are being met and exceeded with these games, which just raises the bar. And that's why it really does come down to this. People need to just shake themselves loose of this idea that video games just perpetually cost $50 or $60. So I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know why you think that's true or why you think that is, and how little you can possibly understand about the situation, both macro and micro, by continuing to complain about these sorts of things. So when I saw that, I thought it was a big shrug. But remember, these are the same people that were complaining. How much does that Nintendo Online thing cost? It's like $50 a year or something, isn't it?
If you get the one with the expansion pass.
Right. And I'm like, and people were like, we're aghast. I'm like, are you crazy? That is such awesome value. All the games you get now, there are Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games on there, I think, as well. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow, man, there's just a totally different metric of value on that console. To me, I look at that and I'm like, that's a fucking steal. And $70 for Zelda, is it really that big of a deal? I think these purchases over and over again add up, no doubt. But I think on a one-off basis, if you really have that much, if like $10 really is going to make or break the deal for you to the point where you're going to complain about it on the internet and stuff, I don't know that you should be playing games, because I think your money situation suggests that you should be saving it. That's my honest assessment. You know, I'm not saying people should complain and take it on the chin or anything like that. It's just that these complaints suggest to me that some people are involved in a hobby that is unaffordable to them. Yeah. And that doesn't mean it's unaffordable to everyone that's playing them. And this idea that in 1996, let's say 1997, I went into EB, bought Final Fantasy VII for $50. $50 in 1997. 25 years later, I will buy Final Fantasy 26 actually by the time it comes out. I will buy Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 for $70. The more expensive game was Final Fantasy VII in 1997. That's just the fact. No argument about it.
Oh, they will.
So everyone's just got. I know you're preaching to the choir and vice versa, but yeah, this is a tired debate at this point, in my opinion.
I know we're way off from Nintendo, but I don't know where I'd fit this in later, and it's relevant. You mentioned about how games, how they kind of maybe wish they would have gone higher at the start of the generation. I have a theory that the way of the future is the $10 early access. You can see it laid out real clearly this past week with Hogwarts Legacy. $10, you get in a few days early, give you a couple skins that no one cares about. I mean, sure, someone cares about some of them, but and then that's the easy way to make up this money. I really think in the next year we're going to see all big AAA games $10 early access, $80. That's their way of fighting back inflation without just straight up raising the price. Yeah,
that's a great point. And it seems like it's been very successful. I didn't do it because I didn't have the time to play it. So I was like, well, there's no reason for me to waste that money. But
exactly,
there's a lot of value in that too. Like 3 days early for a $10 fee. It's like, okay, that's do it or don't. But it's just an overall thing of we gotta make sure that we understand as enthusiasts and lovers of games that if we are not willing to pay for them, then they're simply not going to exist. Or they're going to exist in ways you don't want your games. And I'll tell you right now, you're not going to want some of the games that are coming. No doubt. So just keep these things in mind. We're not going to talk about it on the show, but because I was going to, I read all of it, but it's like, it has nothing to do with us. It's really more of a Xbox Activision thing, but the CMA in the UK released their report and their findings, and Microsoft admits in their own correspondence that things like Game Pass are destroying the ability to sell games on their platform. It's like, well, that's going to have a consequence. It already is, by the way, having a consequence on your platform.
Microsoft said that?
Yeah, it's in the state.
I'm sure you felt like big dick moment right there.
Well, I've been right the whole time. I mean, I know that. I don't dude. And again, this is tangential and whatever. I'm going to leave the Xbox stuff and the nitty gritty of this to the Dukes. But sure. I think some people need to wake up a little bit. People lie to you sometimes, or they obfuscate or mislead. And I think in the cases of how Xbox talks about, or how Microsoft talks about their Xbox, it's in the obfuscation category. If they believed the console was doing well and selling well and Game Pass was this and that and the other thing, they would tell you all the numbers. They don't, because the numbers don't pan out in their favor necessarily. We see things like revenue, but we don't necessarily know full operating income. We see things like hardware installation, but not total cumulative sales. We see monthly active users, but no notice of how many people are subscribed to these things now, and so on and so forth. If you don't think that they're not telling you those numbers because they don't want to, you're right. That's all there is to it. How do I know this? Because that's the way businesses function. And also, I've been in this industry long enough to know that, the company that wouldn't shut the fuck up about numbers in the Xbox 360 era, it was Microsoft. You know who hasn't said a word about numbers since the Xbox 360 era? Microsoft. So it's not to say that Microsoft is a unique company or Phil Spencer and these guys are unique in that they're going to obfuscate, mislead, and try to make themselves look good. That's the thing all companies do. I just don't understand why people don't look at them and say like, oh, they also do that, because they do. So when you see things like Game Pass subscribers spend 20% more on game, or like whatever it is like, okay, that's not even a useful stat. The question is, how are your games selling on your console? They're not. And we discussed this on NPD when we were going over the annual NPD numbers and how different they were compared to PlayStation and Xbox, suggesting that people are buying old Call of Duty games and doing all these things where we have to keep these things in mind. It's not simply how much money we spend, but also how much value we get. And I want lots of value out of games. So I'm willing to spend the money. to pay for them. And I've always been willing to spend money on games since I was a little kid. That was the cost. And they were way more expensive when I was a little kid than they are now. And they were way worse than they are now. Way shorter, with no production value. Please. See it for what it is, please.
Please.
Nimbus wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC, hope you are doing well. I know this is a PlayStation podcast, but some interesting news has come from Nintendo. As we discussed, the Switch has now surpassed 122 million sales, making it the second best home console and the third best overall. I think it's quite likely that the Switch's successor will at the very least be announced in the next 12 months, which leaves us with one big question. Will the Switch have enough momentum to surpass the DS with 154 million sales and the PS2 with 155 million? Personally, I think the Switch is in with a good shot, especially with the new Zelda game coming out, but maybe the Switch 2's announcement will kill the momentum before it can gain the extra 34 million units. What do you boys think?" It's funny you write in about this, Nimbus, because this is something Micah and I were discussing just yesterday when we were making dinner. And I was saying, Dustin, that I just don't think the timing is going to work out. There's a potential for this, but they're basically at the end now. There's one more big game, Zelda. You assume that that's going to move millions of units of hardware, but you also assume that many, many, many people have Switch now. However, anecdotally in my own life, I've noticed that people, especially on the periphery, are still buying Switches. I'll give you two examples. The neighbor across the street I'm friends with, this couple, we lent them our PS4 Pro to mess around with. And but they ended up buying a Switch and really liking that and going in that direction. And then Micah's sister and her fiance just both bought Switch Lites to play with each other, various games. So I'm seeing anecdotes of people still buying in as the cost becomes cheaper and more accessible as the game catalog grows. There's a lot there to love if you don't care. And so I think that 34 million units is doable, but I just don't think so. Like I just, who is left really to get that number? The one thing Switch is missing that PS2 had is at that time, fundamentally important multimedia functionality that Switch totally eschews and doesn't even mess with at all. And I'm not saying it needs that specifically. I'm just saying that's why so many PS2s were sold. I'm telling you, people weren't buying 150 million PS2s to play games. Games didn't sell anywhere near as many copies as they do now back in that era, even though there were a lot of PS2s. Games often sold 500,000, a million, 1.5, 2 million, but games getting into 10, 15, 20, that was exceedingly rare, like almost never. And so people were buying it for other reasons, and I don't think those other reasons exist with the Switch. So that's kind of my take. How do you feel about this? Do you think that it's in the rearview mirror of PS2, but I think PS2 is pretty secure.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how they handle what the Switch successor is. Is it something that replaces the Switch? Is it a new premium option that lives alongside the current Switch? It's really hard to say. But it is funny you were mentioning about people still buying Switches. Now that I think about it, I bought a Switch at launch and I bought a Switch OLED. So that's two right there. I bought one for Holly, a Switch Lite. So that was another one. And then just like 2 weeks ago, I bought a Switch Lite for my mom for her birthday. So I've bought 4, and that's just me. And I imagine that Nintendo, and I think this is something that they said before, is that they're like, they don't necessarily see Switch as you buy one device for your family. They want everyone in the family to have one. And that's how you do like multiplayer and different stuff like that. So that is a pretty big gap to get to, but it really just depends how long they see the life cycle. And like I said earlier, it sounds like they're ordering more, like a shocking amount from suppliers. They're not slowing down. So clearly they feel that it's going to continue to sell despite whatever other moves they have going on.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see the timeline of the new hardware and what it looks like and what it can do, because the reality with the Switch is that it was underpowered from the very, very beginning. So at this point, it really is aged. And I think that that does matter. It just fundamentally does matter. I don't know how a person can sit down and play Dead Space Remake, for instance, on PS5 and then look at even the Zelda game, the new Zelda game, which is beautiful, and not see the difference between those two games and how staggering it is and how far behind Switch is. Switch was underpowered even by PS4 standards. So as we accelerate forward to a potential PS5 Pro and all these things, and obviously PC gaming ratcheting things up and all the rest, Nintendo it's dangerous because it's very monocultural in that it's all about their own games. But if they don't deliver those games, and there have been eras where they haven't, like let's say some of the GameCube era, although I loved the GameCube, certainly the last half of the Wii, all of Wii U, where if they don't deliver, they have no partners that can help them in any real way. You always have Ubisoft around and all these, but it doesn't matter. Zombie U is not going to save your console. And so that's the thing I think about with them, where I think they realize they're on the clock requisite enough where they need to get something new out. But even when they get this something new out, I bet you it's not going to be impressive, because it inherently can't be unless it's going to be really expensive. It's going to be a handheld. So I don't know.
I think that you maybe are putting a little more importance on graphics and fidelity. For us and for people that listen to this podcast, yes, absolutely. But I'm willing to bet that I would say a majority of Switch owners don't care, really. And I think that it's become more apparent to people like us as we see the changeover from PS4 to PS5. Obviously, a big graphics and resolution update, but most importantly, I think that people care about frame rates now more than ever. So I think that that's where we're starting to really feel a lot of that Switch age. But I don't know. And the third party thing too is interesting in that I think that now more than ever, and I don't know, maybe the numbers don't support this theory, so people can feel free to let me know if this is off. But I think that the thing that backs up the Switch when there's no first party games are indie games and smaller games, because people like that ability to be able to take it anywhere. It's the go-to portable console right now. And of course there's Steam Deck, but I mean, nowhere near the numbers of Switch. So I wonder what that does for their business and how they choose to line things up. And obviously we've seen a huge indie emphasis from them. I mean, they had a bunch of stuff at their Nintendo Direct of indie games and more casual stuff, because clearly that's something that they're seeing a lot of sales from.
Yeah, we'll find out what the deal is with them. I'm very curious, because they have so much money right now, so much success, so much momentum, a lot of cross media potential and power happening with the Mario movie and theme parks, and very much a Disney-like company. Full Metal McCoy wrote in and said, "Hey dudes, bit of a hypothetical for you men. Microsoft and Nintendo have both now done shadow drops at their most recent showcases. If PlayStation were to do the same at the next State of Play or PlayStation Showcase, what would it be? Infamous remasters, Resistance Collection, Jack 7, keep respecting, but be nasty to that chicken." Thank you, Full Metal McCoy. Sony did the last time I remember Sony doing a shadow drop was Entwined.
Yeah.
At E3 2014. That was on PS3, PS4, and Vita, I want to say. From and that game was fine, but it was not anything special. And recently we had a Hi-Fi Rush shadow drop from Tango via Xbox, and we had Metroid Prime being shadow dropped from Nintendo, or a remaster of the original game. Very tempting, because I'm a huge fan of that game. I love Metroid Prime, and Metroid Prime 2 especially. Metroid Prime 3 is pretty good too. It was one of the few games on Wii that was that felt like they belonged on the Wii, I guess, inherently. But I don't know what would come out. I noticed that Infamous. I noticed that Insomniac keeps teasing Resistance, but I don't know. I mean, they've been doing this for years. I don't know why. That would be awesome though, to get a collection of something. Do you feel like a shadow drop is imminent or possible?
I think that from a business perspective, their best shadow drop would be one of their live service games, because I think that the thing with some live service games is that I think if there's too much lead up, then it instantly can start to build pessimism around them, as people start to either get annoyed with seeing it or just be like, oh, write this off because it looks like a Fortnite clone or something like that. But a shadow drop of something like that, it's like, oh, no one has any idea what this is. And if it's a click away, or, press away to download it and check it out, then yeah, why not check it out? No one's told you that you shouldn't like it yet. Dude, imagine, I think it is likely for maybe one of the games that we keep speculating is that we won't like, right? To be shadow dropped. But imagine if Last of Us Factions shadow dropped, something like that, where you saw so much shit about Last of Us Part 2 and all the leaks and stuff like that. They're like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. We're just dropping it. We're just dropping Last of Us Factions. Here it is. That would be super awesome. I don't know if that's the move, but it would be really exciting.
Yeah, that would be cool. Be very hard to keep secret, but it's possible. I mean, that Hi-Fi Rush or whatever game was totally secret. Tangle apparently has had that in the works for years. So I think it's pretty impressive that they were able to keep it secret enough to just launch it like that. And I think it's great that Microsoft is letting their studios kind of explore these smaller games. They're going to be necessary on Game Pass. Like, this isn't a game you subscribe to Game Pass for. This is a game that keeps you on Game Pass for another month while it gets you to the next game. And I think that's very wise. And yeah, Metroid Prime has been long. I'm very curious what Retro is doing, but in the meantime, I think this is a nice little project and it looks beautiful. I mean, I remember Metroid Prime being like one of the most impressive games I'd ever played up to that point in my life. The rain on the visor, and I don't know, there's something really magical about that game.
I'm excited to play it. I'm busy with other stuff right now, but it looks awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. And we'll see if the other two get that kind of love too. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know. When Pixel Opus's first game was entwined, so there was no way, no one even cared. No one even knew who Pixel Opus was. So I don't know. That game was fine. I reviewed that game at IGN, as I recall, and I think it was fine. But there's a downside to it too, about attention, and I don't know. You kind of get that one hit. What if it doesn't work? What if no one cares? What if there's a big news item that day? What if fucking terrorist attack? Like anything could happen to like just ruin your momentum. Like, at least think of MotorStorm Apocalypse on PS3 that was delayed indefinitely in Japan after the horrible earthquake and tsunami there because of the kind of subject matter. But it's not like they were planning on dropping it the day the earthquake came out. They had a release date announced, and they were able to work around it and plan around it. So I still think the most optimal thing is to announce games, and we'll talk about this actually later. The most optimal way is to announce games like within a year at the most, and then hopefully even shorter of a time than that. All right, we can get through these next few things pretty quickly. I wanted to just point to a great interview that VG 24/7 did, the website VG 24/7, which I didn't honestly even know existed anymore. Had an exclusive with Yoshinori Kitase, longtime producer of Final Fantasy VII, or Final Fantasy series, and producer of Final Fantasy VII Remake and its sequel. And I just want to suggest that it's based on the 26th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII coming out on PS1 in Japan, and kind of the memories of that. And there's just a lot of interesting insight, including my favorite thing in there is a screenshot of a Super Famicom version of Final Fantasy VII, where when they were thinking about what they were going to do next, using Locke from Final Fantasy VI as the placeholder sprite. There's just a lot of really cool shit in there, and a lot of interesting thoughts about, like, he's asked point blank about a very big secret in Final Fantasy VII, and he like refuses to talk about, and some other stuff. So I thought it was really great. Did you get a chance to look at this?
Yeah, that's the part that actually stuck out to me, is the secret that he just said, that he's like, I'll leave that to players' imaginations, which I think it's cool. Keep the secret going at this point. It's been 26 years. Just let it go. Maybe take it to your grave, honestly.
Yeah, the secret he's referring to, I know it's not a spoiler anymore. Everyone knows. I mean, if you really care about Final Fantasy VII spoilers, you can just fast forward a few seconds. I'll give you a moment to do so. But in Final Fantasy VII, everyone knows Aerith dies. And there's a way in the game where like you can see a ghostly figure of her by doing a certain thing. And there's like a whole almost creepypasta type stuff around it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. One other thing I wanted to bring up is Wolong Fallen Dynasty. The upcoming game is getting a demo February 24th. Oh, are you interested in playing this game? I mean, this is right up your alley.
Yeah.
Koei Tecmo, Team Ninja, Asian.
Whoa. I mean, you're not wrong. Yeah.
Oh, I know I'm not.
So I didn't really like Neo 1 and 2. They just didn't really, I don't know. I've talked about this before, but I don't like the loot system. Like, there's so much loot all the time. Apparently this game though has a lot more Sekiro elements, if I've heard correctly. So the fact there's a demo is awesome, because I'll definitely check that out, but I'm not necessarily sold on like buying and picking up the game yet. So a demo is a nice little thing for people like me on the fence.
Yeah, it comes out. I wanted to look up the date. It comes out. It's a PS4 and PS5 game, disappointingly, but it comes out March 3rd, 2023. So just in a little while. Team Ninja, Koei Tecmo. And importantly, you'll be able to transfer your save from the demo, which is key.
They did that with Octopath Traveler 2, also, that just came out. The demo is out now, I believe, and you can transfer your save for that as well.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think that's a nice idea.
Nice
Not
thing.
Unprecedented, of course, but nice when they do that. Quick note, It Takes Two surpassed 10 million copies, according to developer Hazelight. Ladaze wrote into us on Patreon and said, "Hey, CDC. Last week, Hazelight announced that It Takes Two surpassed 10 million copies sold, an impressive feat for a smaller game. But then earlier this week, EA announced that their EA Originals label would no longer be publishing niche games. Am I the only one who thinks the timing of these two announcements seems a bit odd? They just published a game in a very niche genre, couch co-op, that surpassed all of their expectations, and their response is to basically move on from that. Am I missing something, or is this just head scratching to you guys? Thanks for the great show as always." I read what you're referencing. It was I think it was an interview on Games Industry Biz, maybe, or something like that. I don't think that that's quite what they said, though. I think what they said is that they're exploring bigger and bigger games. EA Originals, when it was like the era of that Yarny character and that game Faye or whatever they did, or Fee or whatever. These are smaller games that they were trying to like give a one up to. And I forgot about this. I don't know if you remember this. EA Originals was apparently originally ran entirely in the red on purpose. They wouldn't take any money from it and give all of the profit, I guess, to or even maybe all the revenue to the developer itself. And it was kind of like a way, I think they were trying to rehabilitate their image in the wake of the consumerist worst company in the world kind of shit, and all the things that were kind of, and EA's just downtrodden nature during the PS3 era, especially. And so I think that they want to get away from that kind of stuff because they're going to see greater success investing money as a real third party would in a game like Wild Hearts with Koei Tecmo and Omega Force. I think you're going to get the best of both worlds. And one thing they talk about in that piece is the critical reception of all of their games has basically been mega positive, and that's what they care about the most. But I don't know that I read, unless I'm missing something, I don't know that I read that they're never going to do those games again. I think what they're saying is that we are opening what EA Originals up into a bigger concept than what it used to be. And that's what you kind of want, I think. They ultimately want to make money. I also don't think that they're in a rehabilitative stance anymore either. So there's that as well.
Right. I didn't realize that Wild Hearts is under that label of EA Originals. So yeah, you can clearly see the shift that they're just broadening out on what this EA Originals branding, I guess, means. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see what other games they eventually put under that label. Maybe they do shift only over to bigger games, but I can't imagine that that's something they would do, because as the write-in suggests, It Takes Two. I mean, selling crazy numbers. So it seems like they're probably just most interested in games that they think are going to be really good and make them money. So
finally, before we get into what we're playing, Sea of Stars, the upcoming role-playing, Japanese-inspired role-playing game from Sabotage that takes place in the universe of The Messenger, the wonderful side-scrolling action game from several years ago, has a release date. It will come out on August 29th on both PS4 and PS5. What do you think? Can't wait to play this game. I'm now in blackout mode, not going to be looking at anything moving forward, but very, very, very excited about this game. It just looks absolutely beautiful. And The Messenger was awesome. So
yeah, the trailer that they showed during the Nintendo Direct was awesome. And I don't know, I was kind of on the fence about checking out the demo, because I think I'm just going to check out the whole game. Like I don't need a demo.
Yeah, I don't need a demo for this.
I think I'm with you, where I'll just wait till it's ready for us at this point.
Yeah, it looks really, really incredible. I'm just scrolling through it again. The trailer. Yeah, this is good stuff. We're in some sort of bubbling, old school 1632-bit era inspired role-playing renaissance right now, and it's a good place to be. Very excited about that. Okay, let's get into what we're playing. Let's see here. Should we start with Yeah, let's start with Hogwarts Legacy, shall we?
Sure. Let's do it.
Sean Kelby Jr. wrote in and said, "Hey guys, are you all playing Hogwarts Legacy? If so, what are your thoughts so far? I think it's better in all aspects than what I was expecting, especially the graphics and the detail. So Hogwarts Legacy, by the time you listen to this, is out for all. It was out, obviously, in the aforementioned pre-release state if you paid $10 extra. I have not played it yet, so I have nothing to say about it in that respect. I have things to say in other respects, of course, and we will talk about those things. But I'm curious, as a game, what do you think of Hogwarts Legacy so far?
Yeah. So Colin, I got to tell you though, first, right off the bat, you win on this one because I had to buy it digitally. I was shocked. I went out. I even tried to go to GameStop to pre-order the deluxe edition so I could get it early. And they told me no. They said they were all sold out of the deluxe edition. And so I even looked at like Best Buy, all sold out everywhere of the physical version of this. And I was like, well, fuck it. And so I just got the digital version.
Nice.
But I have about 5-ish hours in this game so far. And it's funny because even though I'm 5 hours in, I feel like I've just barely scratched the surface because every time I play this game, I end up fucking around because the castle and Hogwarts in this game is so damn cool. Now, I think it's important to preface that you can go back and listen to old episodes of this show. You can very clearly hear me be very skeptical about this game. Coming from Avalanche, not that they're a bad team by any means. In fact, it seems like the products and the games they made in the past were very good for what they were, whether it's Disney Infinity or the Cars 2 game or whatever, Cars 3, I don't know. One of the Cars games. All those were good for what they were, but I really didn't think that they had what it takes to make this kind of game just from the experience they had in the past. But I'm happy to report that I was totally wrong. This game is so incredibly impressive on many levels. And every time I've sat down to play it, I'm shocked by it. I'm not saying that it's the most this is the most amazing, most fun game ever, but there are so many aspects that are so cool. And I already mentioned the castle in particular. It's really, really impressive. The level of detail and just the overall size of the castle as well. Being able to walk around, all the paintings on the wall move just like they do in the movie and in the books. And there's like giant tapestries and giant stained glass windows. And each room, like you can go into, like a different room that you'd have a class in. So there's like the greenhouse that you do the different herbology stuff, or you can go in the potions room and how they're each set up and they each have these like finely little details. And that's the thing that stuck out to me the most, is just that the level of care taken in order to get this immersive level in the environment is insane. It's not necessarily always perfect in how it, and I don't know if there's just a limitation or something that they'll be able to optimize, but every once in a while you will, if you're running towards a door, it'll stop you and it needs to load for like 1 second and then the door bursts open. But other than that, I think what makes it feel so cool is that a lot of times in open world games, you are either inside and doing a level inside and it's very separate from everything else, or for most of the game, you are outside. Like you think of like a GTA game that is like mostly outdoors, right? Or driving around, stuff like that. This game, you're going in and out of the school, you're leaving the school, you're going to Hogsmeade, the village nearby, and a ton of the buildings, you're able to go inside and buy stuff and talk to different shopkeepers and stuff like that. And so, and the crazy thing too is just looking at the map is that I've only been to like 2 small sections. So they've really, really expanded and you can go pretty far outside the school. The combat is pretty, I feel like I can't say whether it's like amazing. I can tell you it's definitely not bad. I haven't unlocked enough stuff to truly say. It kind of reminds me of Arkham combat a little bit, where you'll get a little indicator above your head when you need to block. And then if you're able to block correctly, you can kind of like do a spell back. And different characters, when you're fighting them, they'll have like a bubble around them. And so if it's red, you need to use a fire attack and that will block out their defenses, or you need to use a yellow spell in order to break that as well. So, and the other thing too is just that all of the writing and the voice acting and the way that it tells the story all feels very authentic to fans of the books and the movies. And it's one of those games that every time I sit down to play it, I'm just so excited to see what other cool and interesting things I can discover. It's not breaking any insane ground for open world games. Like if someone tries to tell you this is like a Harry Potter Skyrim game, that's not what this is. When I was talking to Ben about it, we concluded that we felt like it was much more like a Harry Potter Witcher game in the way that it handled its different like the way you interact with the map, the way you get side quests from characters and stuff like that. Felt more along the lines of that, but not exactly. I'm not saying this is like a Witcher game, but overall too, as far as I guess the only other thing to really important that as people are thinking about picking this game up, and if you're listening to this on release day, is that there are multiple modes on performance on how you want to play this game. So there's a fidelity mode, which is 30. There's a fidelity ray tracing, which I think is 30, but maybe not as consistent. I haven't even really used that mode. Performance, which is a really, really good 60. Like that's how I'm playing is performance mode. But there's even a high frame rate mode, which lets you unlock it. And you can get, I saw online, it was closer to like 80 or 90 frames. And then there's a balanced mode, which if you have a high frame rate TV, it'll lock it at 40. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds. But I'm playing on performance and it's been really, really great. So overall, I will just say that if you are a fan of Harry Potter, whether it's the books or the movies, and even if it's, not even if you're a mega fan, let's just say you like the movies, you find it intriguing, you absolutely have to play this game for sure. I've been trying to really decide if I think this game, what would it mean to someone who isn't into Harry Potter? And it's hard for me to say as someone who has liked Harry Potter for a long time. But the detail in the world and the intrigue, I feel like is there. So maybe check it out. But I think that it's safe to say that this is like an easy pickup for a lot of people.
Right on. I'm looking forward to playing it. I haven't played it because I've been busy trying to platinum Dead Space Remake, which we'll get to momentarily. But I feel like, so I didn't know how I wanted to really deal with Hogwarts Legacy, like even talking about it, because it's so toxic and so annoying out there. But I don't think we often say on this show, let me back up and say, we often say on this show that we don't make the news, we just react to it. And there's no doubt that the news is such that, everyone sees it for what it is. It's insanity, and we would have to cover it. I think it would be ridiculous to ignore that hullabaloo. So I'll speak more to the game next week and then the week after. My best friend Ramon is going to be here this weekend, so I don't even think I'm going to have much time to play anyway. But next week I'll be able to play more and so on. And then before we go to Houston and before PSVR 2 comes out, I hope to have it all wrapped up. We'll see. That might be ambitious. So I'll have more to say about the game itself. And I'm actually really excited because as people can go back and know, and long before there was any controversy around this game, I was saying that I was excited for this to be the conduit into which I get back into Harry Potter, or try to really get into Harry Potter and see it for what it is and all that. And, I got my book on my shelf and I'm ready to go, with all this. And I actually made a meme that I shared in the memes channel on our Discord. Come join us on our Discord if you're on Patreon. More than 5,500 or so of you there now. But I made a meme of, the mega or Giga Chad. And it was like me when you try to spoil Hogwarts Legacy and I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Because that it's not that I want to tempt fate or anything like that, but it's just funny to me. It's like when people were complaining about Game of Thrones spoilers, and I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck any of you are talking about. I don't know. I watched the show. I have no idea what half the characters' names are. I have no idea. I was like, oh, it's that dude. I remember him from this thing. And so like you almost couldn't spoil it for me. And I feel like for me anyway, Hogwarts Legacy is a similar situation. Although I do remember when the last book came out, that must have been 2007, I want to say, maybe 2008. I think it was 2007. I remember there was like proto YouTube videos of like people reading the last pages of the book and then like driving by, people waiting in line to buy it. And I know it's crazy. So I wanted to say, I wanted to say that from the very beginning, the whole spoiler
thing. What's happened
thing,
to me, Colin?
Oh, the game
spoiler
got
thing.
The game.
So I posted a tweet that had nothing to do with J.K. Rowling, nothing to do with the controversy. I wanted to do what I always do when I'm really excited about a game and just say something about it. And that's what I did. I got at least 6 or 7 tweet replies with screenshots and explanation and full things about what the end of the game is. Just people just drive by trying to post it. And so, yeah, I had parts of the game, end of the game spoiled for me. And I hid those replies and I blocked those people. I was like, man, this is the state of activism in 2023 is there's people just going around looking for tweets, not even if they're about J.K. Rowling, just looking for any tweet about this game, trying to ruin it for people. And I felt it was one of those things I contemplate. I was thinking about, I'm like, should I don't want to delete the tweet because of any kind of pressure, but I felt bad for any listeners of the show or whatever that follow me on Twitter. And if they see that tweet and they click and read the replies, like, I don't want it spoiled for them.
Yeah, it sucks.
You know?
It's
and
rude.
I was like, no, I'm not getting rid of it. So if you see that tweet, don't click I tried to hide as many replies as I could, but it's just insane. Absolutely insane what's happening.
Yeah, it's sad and it's ridiculous. And I have a lot to say about it. And I don't know how much I'll get to it here. First of all, let me think about this. Well, ask me this question. I typed the question into and it's an extreme question, but I want you to just say it to me. Ready?
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, ask me what it says.
What did Hitler do?
Well, he was a fascistic dictator who had designs on world conquest, and he came to power in a years-long struggle, and then he put people in camps, and he murdered people by the millions, and he took over all of this land, and was a complete tyrant and dictator. And we had to do something about him, and he was a threat to all of his neighbors, and he's one of the worst people that ever lived, and just complete pure evil. What did J.K. Rowling do? Why can't that question be answered as succinctly as that? Who is Jesus, Dustin?
It depends on who you ask.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes. I know what you're saying.
This question that it doesn't have, I asked this question and I'm like, and someone literally gives me a 90-minute video. It doesn't give, for me to tell you what Hitler did, I don't need a 90-minute video. Now, I know it's an extreme example, but since we're talking about people that are being encapsulated as some sort of pure evil, it should be very, very simple to say what they did. What they said, point to a quote. I mean, you would think you'd be able to nail them. I know this shell game because it's played against me all the time. That's why I think I'm somewhat sensitive to it. And I think that it starts there. When someone can't tell me what did J.K. Rowling do and answer that in a few sentences, I have no interest. Because there is nothing so complex that you can't reduce. I don't need a fucking college course on what J.K. Rowling said. What did she say? Why can't anyone tell me that? Now, Chris didn't actually put me in touch. He said that a somewhat prominent streamer wanted to come on the show to talk to me about this. So I gave him my contact information and I never heard. Now, that might have just never happened. It might have fallen through the cracks, whatever. I wouldn't want to defend a defenseless position personally, because we all know the answer to the question is that she said nothing. Because if she said something, you would know what it is because people would be able to tell you. It's that simple. You know how I just told you about why Hitler was bad? In like 50 words?
Right.
Fascistic, tyrannical dictator, killed millions of people. World conquest. War. Evil. Genocide. I just don't understand how the answer to the question is a 90-minute video. The answer to the question is an article that doesn't say anything. The answer to the question is a tweet that doesn't say anything. It's complete nonsense. And I think that the effort against Hogwarts Legacy has failed.
Yeah.
Completely
That's
failed.
very obvious now.
Completely failed. And to say that a lot of people aren't aware of it is definitely true. But to say that a material amount of people are aware of it is also very true. Millions of the copies that will have been sold of this game will have gone to people that know damn well what is going on with this situation. And it's a big L, a gigantic loss for the speech police and the kind of cultural tyrants that tell you what you can and cannot like and try to hold a gun against your head to make sure that you do exactly what they want. And I think that there's something about fair play here and people speaking loudly. See, one of the things that I think is interesting is people are allowed to start culture war, but people aren't allowed to respond to it. You're dumb if you buy the game because someone told you not to. Okay, that's fine if you feel that way. But what is the person supposed to, how is a person supposed to respond to something they think is unfair like this? They're not allowed to fight back. They have to just take it. There is no recourse. I think that that's nonsensical. Here's what I think that this is has played out in full view of the games industry is this hyper sensitive comic book progressive lobby is obnoxious and everyone sees it for exactly what it is. And there is no power in that lobby. Obviously. The game is being sold by the millions, no doubt, over the coming weeks. And it broke records on Steam. It broke records on Twitch. This isn't some incidental game, and I really do believe that the furor around it has brought much more attention to it in a positive way. Completely backfired. Just empowers and enriches J.K. Rowling even more. But the important thing to note, in my opinion, is that there is no here. There's nothing here, is what I should say. That there's no answer to the what did Hitler say or what did Hitler do with J.K. Rowling because she didn't do anything. And I think that this is a reaction for normalcy and decency. And on the other end, just a sort of hysteria. Lots of, I don't like using buzz terms, as people know. I never use the term SJW. I hate that kind of shit. I really do. You would never hear me use those kinds of terms, but there is one term, virtue signaling. The idea that people were going to gain social credit on this blew up in a lot of people's faces all over the place. And so I think it's a ridiculous fiasco and a very ridiculous scenario, a game of telephone. And it's absurd. And the emperor has no clothes, by the way. Just so everyone knows. It's okay to call it what it is. Bullshit is bullshit. Nonsense is nonsense. And when what the funny thing about all the cultural things we talk about on the show is that we don't start them, but we have to respond to them. And this is just another one of those moments, but I really feel like inflection points in history in all sorts of things are not natural. You have to take the inflection point or what could be the inflection point and run with it. And we are at one of those moments with this right now where hopefully this is a complete or at least the beginning of the end in games of this nonsense. It failed, just absolutely failed. And by the way, even Twitch taking lots of money from Warner Brothers to promote the game is a sign of the powerlessness of this lobby. Because Twitch is a hyper progressive, very cognizant and conscious of all of this nonsense company, and they still did it and drove a lot of that traffic and that attention to the game. The bullying on display and all the rest, and a lot of people wrote in about all this stuff. It's embarrassing. See it for what it is and nothing more and nothing less. It's groupthink, it's hysteria, it's bullying over nothing. Over ultimately a woman saying women are women and should be treated like women should be treated like women. That's not offensive. And well, obviously I'm in the majority on that. So it's very like there are there are things I say in the sphere where I am confident in it, but I know that I'm on the wrong end of the majority, right? This isn't one of those. It's just so clear now. It's just so clear. And that, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on this, but I wanted to speak to it.
Well, I think that the side that's important to me is that if you do believe that J.K. Rowling said something that you deem is wrong and you don't want to buy this game because of it, I don't have any problem with that. And I'm guessing, Colin, that you don't either. If you have a guilty conscience about something, then while we may not agree with you on it, I think that it is important for people to do what they think is right in certain circumstances.
Definitely.
And the key for me that comes in is the moral policing of that, like, well, this isn't good for me and it can't be good for anyone else. And everyone else needs to get in line with what I think is right. That's the main problem for me. And the other thing that I find so ironic about this is that, so I highly recommend a video from a really funny YouTube creator named Mighty Keef. You've probably seen one of his videos out there because he's had a lot of really successful viral videos, but he did a video about this. And one thing that he pointed out that I thought was just the cherry on top of all of the irony of all this is that most of this conversation about this game is happening on Twitter. And some will argue this is whataboutism, but I think I don't think that this, I think that this is very relevant. Who owns Twitter? Elon Musk, right? Who arguably, I think, and I'm not going to make the statement whether it is or isn't because I don't really know, but arguably has said things that are more transphobic than J.K. Rowling. And you, when you're on the platform, are viewing ads, or I mean, probably not paying, hopefully not paying for Twitter Blue, but
oh my God,
you're contributing to that, and he owns it. Are you boycotting and making a big stink about Universal Parks or anything that is even loosely associated with J.K. Rowling? How about the bookstore that sells the book and they make money off of it? You know what I mean? It's just like,
well, it's the argument of no ethical consumption, right? You know,
right.
I think it's a cop-out, though, because like that whole idea, it's to your point, is that, first of all, there is such a thing as ethical consumption. It's annoying and hard, and sometimes there's nothing for you to consume in that particular space. And I've said this before, like I'd be so interested, although no company would do this, in a company saying like, we have fair trade domestically made iPhones, like Apple made in the United States, but they cost more, right? Like give people that sort of option, but no, they're not going to do that. And I understand why. But the entire idea, you're right, that the inconsistencies are massive. People will play WWE games. People will, Ubisoft has a lot of shit, leverage at them, whether it's true or not. Obviously, Activision Blizzard, there's just no consistency. It's literally about who you're friends with. Well, let's be honest. Avalanche Software is a studio in the middle of Utah, not very well connected, probably not a lot of industry G's in there, let's say, not people from LA or San Francisco and all of that. They have very little power. They're going to get pushed around and bullied around. They're dealing with this IP that has been attacked for no real reason. And I'll just keep beating that drum over and over again because it's fucking true. And through this game of telephone, they've kind of come out the other end very wealthy, no doubt. And it's great to see. And people have been wondering, like, do you separate the art from the artist and all of that? And I'm like, well, yeah. And also no. I mean, that's two different things. I think that you can talk about the artist. First of all, I think you're right in the sense that people got to do what they want to do and for whatever reason and support what they want. I mean, but one of the reasons is it's so fun. It's so funny seeing this because I don't virtue signal to people about anything. I don't have to put myself in and twist myself into a pretzel for any reason about anything. Because I'm not telling you what to do or what to buy. I'm not telling you that you're making wrong choices. I'm not telling you that you're a bad person and you shouldn't buy this and shouldn't buy that. I just don't put myself in those positions. And in turn, I don't expect to be put in those positions. I do like to bring up what the consequences are of involvement of certain entities, certain countries, certain groups, no doubt. Buying certain games from certain companies is going to give me pause, but I'm not going to not buy a 10-cent published game because there's no rigor there. I don't hold myself to any other in almost any other standard. I'm not the one out here telling people what to do though. See, that's why this is such an easy and breezy time for me right now. So like, I just like shrug. I'm like, I'm not part of this culture war at all. I don't give a fuck what you do. But what I am telling you is that this is all predicated on a lie. And the reason that there is no answer except for 5,000 word DMs and videos that are longer than movies and all these things. I'm like, this is not an answer, dude. Because I don't need a documentary to tell me why Hitler was bad. I don't need a documentary to tell me why Dahmer was bad or Charles Manson. Casey Anthony. Why is it so hard for someone to tell me why it is? Like, what is it? And it's just this like web of nonsense. People literally, dude, I've seen people literally pointing to things and being like, look what you said here. And I'm like, it doesn't say that. Straight up. It doesn't say what you're saying. And yet it gets retweeted and separated. I'm like, it doesn't say that. And so I think this is a big victory ultimately for truth. Truth won. And it happens that it won with a great game. Apparently, I guess I'll judge it for myself. But from this point on, we are going to separate the art from the artist on this show, unless there are questions or issues that we want to bring up. Maybe Chris will have something to say about it next week. But while we have to acknowledge the news as it happens, and we've done that, Hogwarts Legacy will now be treated as a product. And we'll talk about the game based on its merits. And I do think that deserves it. I don't think you have to separate the artist from the art. I just think that when you combine the artist and the art, let it be fair. That's it. I'm personally not the guy that's like, you have to separate those two things. You can. Those are two different products. Review, a discussion, an editorial, etc., whatever. But when everything you're saying is made up, that's not holding anyone to account. And it's unfair. And so I'm going to continue to call it what it is. But it has nothing to do with Hogwarts Legacy generally. This is just another step in the culture war, as it were. So shout out to them.
Yeah.
I'm happy for them.
Hey, while we're on the topic, the one write-in is kind of putting out the opposite idea. Do we want to go to that?
Yeah, I wanted to go to this for Dead Space specifically.
For Dead Space?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mobox, I mean, if you have anything to say about it with this game, we can too. But I wanted to take it in a different directions. Let's go to it. Mobox Graphics wrote in and said, hey guys, are we at a point where games are as good as they're going to ever get? Dev teams are growing into the hundreds, but the quality of the worlds and stories are not scaling with this. I believe we've hit a point where games are actually getting worse. There are more developers working on these games than ever, but the games are more generic than ever. I can't remember the last time a game seriously blew my mind. Do you think we're going to see another paradigm leap in visual and gameplay fidelity like we saw in the PS3 and Xbox 360 days looking at you, BioShock? First of all, that last sentence, the recent episode of Constellation we did, Chris's topic on that was the next-gen leap from PS2 to PS3 or from Xbox to Xbox 360 and how impressive that leap was and how we will probably never see something like that again. And that's probably true. But I wanted to note this. Dead Space Remake is a rebuke of the entire premise of your comment. I'm not saying that you're not necessarily right in some instances. I often say, Mobox, that games are blurring together, especially PlayStation games, that they're kind of becoming an amalgamation, of different checkboxes and items and things that make, role-playing elements and statistics and whatever that are becoming this kind of hive mind of video games. But I play a game like Dead Space Remake, which is a high budget, expensive game. And I'm like, this game's fucking awesome. This game feels new, even though it is old. This game looks new, even though it is old. It is modern. It is fun. Dead Space Remake is a banger. Absolute banger. Stone cold. And I beat it twice now. And I'm on my third playthrough because I'm just kind of cleaning up some trophies. basically the situation I'm in is this. I need to upgrade my suit, or I'm sorry, all my weapons all the way. So I need nodes. And then I have like 3 weapons that I need to get the 30 kill trophies with. And then I'll have all the trophies and I'll get the platinum. So what I was going to do was farm all of that. But then I was like, you know what? I'll just do a third playthrough and just use the weapons organically. It's just going to be the same thing as opposed to having to just sit there and farm this stuff. So hopefully even maybe right after this episode, after dinner tonight, I can wrap that platinum up. But to Mobox's point, I don't feel like games are getting as generic as ever. Even when I see a game like Dead Space Remake, which is a remake of an old game, I see a lot of promise. Through all of the bullshit is busting through some really high quality games. We're off to a pretty impressive start this year. This is good. And are games going to break your mind like BioShock did? I don't know. I don't know if that's ever going to happen again. But being as familiar as I am with Dead Space, having beaten it at least 2 times in the past before it came to PS5 and now beating it 2 more times, this game is an example of just timelessness and is stellar in virtually every way, from combat and control to story and character. The game length, perfect. The pacing, wonderful. I love it. Talk to me about Dead Space Remake.
Yeah, this game's awesome. I really, really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed particularly the different weapons in this game and the way that, and I'm curious about how this compared to the original, just because I played a decent amount of the original, but never finished it. But it had a really nice balance of the way that it doled out ammo to you, in that you couldn't use just one weapon or even the 4 weapons that you have on your quick select. It was constantly making you cycle through the different weapons in order to, just based on the ammo you had in order to survive. But I was really impressed by this overall. The graphics, even on the performance mode on PS5, were really, really shockingly good, I would say. There were moments, particularly with lighting in this game, where you'll be walking and then you'll be like bathed in a yellow glow of like a machine running or something like that. Or there's parts where you'll kill an enemy, and so Isaac will get blood all over him, and then you're in an elevator, and the way the blood and the shines on the character as you go up, I'm like, man, this just looks really, really cool.
Yeah, just real quick before you continue, I would say that the lighting in this game is maybe the best lighting I've ever seen in a video game, actually, or at least the most effective use of lighting that I have ever seen. It is bonkers. And you can go on. I just wanted to throw that out there, reiterate.
Yeah, I think that the only thing that, and this is just kind of like nitpicky, but there was a couple points that I was getting a little frustrated with the way that they did some of the boss battles, particularly that I sometimes just didn't know what to do. And then so I would die a few times. I would die like once or twice, and then it would be really easy.
Yeah, once you know what to do, the bosses, including the last boss, are all very easy, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and it wasn't even that those were just. It's not that they were bad; they were just okay compared to, I think, that the overall moment-to-moment gameplay overall. But yeah, I was really impressed with this game overall. I'm really glad I played it. I want to do a new game plus, probably not till sometime later in the year, if there's any open time, just because I'm moving from one thing to the next. But yeah, this game's totally sick.
Yeah. So what I ended up doing as to build on last week's conversation was I started the game on impossible mode, which wasn't possible in the original Dead Space. On PS3, you had to unlock it. And what impossible mode is it's hard mode plus permadeath. And it's not erasing your saves, but you have to make manual saves or and then send them to the cloud, or you are forced down to hard. So as I said last week, I was playing on impossible and then was forced down to hard because I died and then messed up my save. But I ended up getting the impossible trophy at the end. Now, this was a point of contention with a lot of people busting my balls. I really feel like people that are speaking out of turn on this a little bit. This isn't a dramatic or controversial thing in the trophy sphere at all. This is often the way games end up working, because the suggestion would be that it would be an unearned trophy if someone just did that and then didn't know that they were going to get it. I just knew that it was going to happen. People cheat in quotes like that all the time. Can a Bridge of Spirits? Hate to tell you, most people that have that platinum cheated, because you have to beat it on hard, or you could just set it to hard on the last boss. and beat it that way. I mean, that's a similar kind of thing. And those kinds of workarounds are generally allowed and accepted because they're available to all and don't require you to manipulate the game. So I want to fight back a little bit on some of the bullshit. I know a lot of it's in good spirits and are busting balls, but there's a lot of drama and a lot of controversy and different things in the trophy scene. This is not even appearing as a controversy. This is like just one of those things like, oh, sick. Better do this before fucking patched out, which it hasn't been patched out yet as at the time we're recording this. And the thing is, you still have to beat it on hard mode. And then I beat it. So I beat it on hard. And then I started a new game plus. When you start a new game plus, you get a new suit, you get 50,000 credits, you get like 10 nodes, a bunch of shit. And I played it on normal. And on this, and so I played new game plus, plasma cutter only, secret ending. So to get the secret ending, there are these 12 collectibles that appear around the ship, Ishimura, that you have to go collect that are only available in new game plus. They don't appear in the first game. And they have to be collected in order. So they only appear in order. So like the first one will appear and then that one appears and then you have to know where they all go. Then you do something with these items. And when you beat the game as normal, nothing else happens. Like you get these items. There's nothing in game that suggests anything's going to happen, but there's a secret ending. And I watched it. I was like, it's interesting. And so anyway, my second playthrough, I banged those trophies out all in sequence. So again, the only trophies I'm missing now is to just max out my equipment. So I just need nodes and to get kills, 30 kills, I think, with like the line gun and a couple of other guns. And to your point about ammo, Dead Space is and maybe you'll keep this in mind if and when you play it again, Dead Space is a highly manipulative game. You can really fuck with it in ways that I think it knows you're going to do. And I'll give people some tips. Last week, I told everyone how that you can basically get unlimited credits. I won't go into that again, but there are little things you can do to save yourself money or use items more judiciously. A good example is upgrading your suit and then wiping all the nodes off for $5,000 and then just upgrading your suit again. And that will fill up your health, fill up your kinesis and all that kind of stuff. And you wouldn't have used any items. And you can even leave some of the nodes empty except for all of the other nodes. And then like when you're low on health, go to a bench, use an HP node, and then your health is just full again. And then you get hurt again, and then you use the next HP node, and then your health is full again. And you never use healing packs. And you save them and you put them away for boss fights and all of that. So the game can be really manipulated. And another thing that came to mind, because you were talking about the weapons, is the way that you stop yourself from running into those situations is only using one or two weapons the entire game. Because you will only get ammo when you have a weapon equipped on you. With a very, very rare exception. So if you have the plasma cutter and the pulse rifle on you, you'll only get ammo for those two guns. But if you keep having different guns on you and keep using them, then you're going to keep getting ammo for all the different guns. And so it's a catch-22. That's why the plasma cutter run is not that big of a deal, because the plasma cutter is arguably the best weapon in the game.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of how much ammo it uses and all the rest. Me personally, again, and I don't know if you did this a lot, I used the pulse rifle grenade launcher like it was going out of style, constant basis. That was my number one weapon, the secondary fire on it. But Dead Space Remake is fucking exceptional. It is excellent. And I highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. It is replayable. You're going to need 2 playthroughs at least to get the platinum, to see everything the game has to offer. The first time through, I beat it in 18 hours on hard. I did that with a collectible guide. So, but that also brought me to a lot of backtracking and all that. So I think it kind of washed out. I think you can expect probably 15 to 18 hours your first playthrough. When I played through it on normal the second time, I beat it in 8 hours. So it's you can do it much quicker the second time and know what you're doing and all that. And there's a story mode if you want to play it lightly or whatever. But highly recommended. Shout out to Motive, because I didn't know that they had this in them, to be perfectly honest. And I wonder, it's probably a long shot, but I wonder if Jade Raymond has any of this on her, bringing that into the PlayStation ecosystem via Haven. Probably not, though, because she was at Google when this game was really getting going. But I didn't know Motive was going to become a promising studio, and apparently they're now working on Iron Man, or they have been working on Iron Man, in addition to, no doubt, this game's getting a sequel. So not only because of the ending and the secret ending, I mean, it's not even that, it's that the game is going to obviously be a big hit. It's a critical darling, and commercially, I think it's good for millions of copies. So shout out to Dead Space Remake.
Hell yeah.
All right, let's get into the news. There are only 3 items this week. As I said earlier, Dustin, there was a piece of me. Actually, we recorded late because I wanted to read through the CMA response and do some things. I feel like everything going on with Activision Blizzard has nothing to do with us. I like to keep an eye on it, but again, we're going to leave the legalese to others because in Hoag's absence, I don't want to, I want to dance with the one that brought us in that regard, and I just don't know that it's germane to this podcast at this juncture, because it's just back and forth. When there's a decision or more substantive stuff, or we get more stats that we can go through and all that kind of stuff, then I think we'll talk about it again. So instead, I wanted to talk about these 3 items, and we'll begin with number 1. In a recent episode, we discussed BioWare's obviously tortured upcoming Dragon Age game, Dreadwolf. But in the last week, new information has emerged, including old gameplay, that has us wondering just what's going on with this product. The footage, shared around the net via illicit means, shows what's described by the poster as pre-alpha footage from a playtester. It's undated, but the footage, runs for about 20 cumulative minutes. Apparently, a major quote-unquote reference point for the combat system is none other than Santa Monica Studios' 2018 release God of War, though it's replicated very sloppily in what's shown. Adding to the madness is a report from website Insider Gaming, which notes that though Dreadwolf entered production in 2015, it's predictably no longer remotely the same game. And we noted this in recent weeks. But there's a problem. Insider Gaming sources, quote, said that the game still lacks features, completed character lines, and still contains the remnants of the game's past, which abruptly changed direction in early 2021. As you may recall, it was reported at the time that the new Dragon Age game was going from multiplayer to single player, likely after the disastrous reception of BioWare's aborted service shooter Anthem. The story continues, quote, 2 sources have revealed that some of those major components are still sensed to some degree in the current build of the game, with one source saying the game felt a bit like Destiny, with a central hub where players could probably regroup before heading to the next mission. The game's hub, though, will still play a vital role in Dreadwolf in its single-player format. Dreadwolf follows a similar gameplay loop to its predecessors, which will involve recruiting and growing your crew, whom you'll encounter by completing missions. Your recruited crew will populate your hub, where you can give them different pieces of equipment and modifications as you progress throughout the game. It's understood that you'll be able to move from your hub to missions by passing through a mirrored portal, end quote. BioWare, once publisher Electronic Arts' crown jewel studio, is widely seen as a figment of its former self. Founded in the mid-90s and purchased by EA in 2007, BioWare was once known for the likes of the mega-popular 1998 PC release Baldur's Gate and its 2000 sequel, the 2002 PC RPG Neverwinter Nights, 2003's awesome Star Wars game Knights of the Old Republic, and the 2005 Xbox RPG Jade Empire. And of course, there's their Mass Effect trilogy, which began in 2007, put them on the map for all, alongside Dragon Age Origins, which launched in 2009. But since Dragon Age Inquisition came to PS3 and PS4 in 2014, it's been all downhill. 2017's Mass Effect Andromeda was a flop, and the 2019's aforementioned Anthem was as well, though the Mass Effect last-gen ports in 2021 were well done. As for Dreadwolf, it's unclear when it'll come out or what it'll be like, and it's important to remember that a new Mass Effect game is also in development, so the pressure on BioWare is effectively doubled. What do you think of this? The footage that was released is old and in alpha, and I would also argue unacceptably bad, even in premise. This can't be what Dragon Age is. I don't know what they're doing here, but it's clear that Dragon Age, the original multiplayer-centric Dragon Age, was obviously greenlit at around the same time Anthem was, and that they really thought that they were going to go into this multiplayer sphere, only to be pulled out pretty violently. I don't know why anyone would have any hope in this product, and BioWare generally. And that I don't really care about this game. I care much more about the new Mass Effect, but they are in total. I'm in a total show me pose until I play the game. I'm not going to believe it, because they just are such a figment compared to what they used to be. And I can't believe that EA has allowed this to happen, especially at a time when EA is doing pretty well. You would think a healthy EA would have a healthy BioWare, but they certainly don't.
No. Yeah, the most ironic thing about what you read here, Colin, is just that they said, quote, the game felt a bit like Destiny, when the big problem with the last game, Anthem, is that they should have made it more like Destiny. They had someone that was already kind of trying out the ideas they were doing and had figured out a lot of these problems. So then you see that they were starting to mimic it in this game, and now they're stepping away from that, but the remnants are still in there. And that's, I don't know, that's probably the most concerning aspect to me, is that it's like, I understand that there's probably a strong desire to retrofit work that was already done as a cost-saving measure, but I don't think BioWare is in a position to be cutting corners on stuff they're not, going to use in order to make a game at this point. And we had a clip that we just put out of when we talked about BioWare last that resonated with a lot of people, that it's like, man, BioWare, they have a lot to prove right now. And it's just so funny to me that it's like, okay, you have an IP like Dragon Age. There's 3 games, and it's pretty well defined what people like about Dragon Age. At least that's what I would expect. I'm not big on Dragon Age, but you can ask a Dragon Age fan what they like about it, and they'll probably be able to tell you. And then they go and make a game that's like God of War. It's like, why? We have a game that's like God of War. It's God of War Ragnarok. Like, why would you want to retrofit that into something that people already have preconceived notions of what it should or shouldn't be, And
just even going in the action RPG direction alone is not what Dragon Age is. I mean, I have no problem with them doing that. That actually makes me more likely to play it. But getting away from its more CRPG, clicky, fucking, weird interface is in and of itself a sign that they don't know what their own audience wants.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that, I don't know, to me right now, BioWare, as much as we talk about teams being adventurous and creative and trying new things, now's the time to probably do something a bit on the safer side, because you've really managed to totally disgrace what people love about your games in a lot of ways, with Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda, and I think I said this last time we talked about BioWare, but it's really sad that the best thing you did recently was putting out your old shit again. And I don't know. It seems like, man, it's just the amount of chaos at this studio with people coming in and out, and you have like zombified versions of games that are in development that it seems like don't really make a lot of sense for what the game even supposed to be. I just don't get it. I don't get it.
We're running into an interesting issue. Game studios are unique entities in some sense. There's kind of a parallel in animation and in production and like real production, but not really. Studios are looked at as these permanent things, but maybe we shouldn't look at them like that. And maybe even the publishers shouldn't look at them like that. It's not to say that you take BioWare and just fire everyone. I don't think that's the answer at all. But maybe what you do is you just make a whole new team. You hire a bunch of people from BioWare and people from other teams, and you have something new going that can do something else. And if you want to do something else, you're unencumbered by your history. There are not many studios when push comes to shove that survive really long periods of time. And we're getting more and more of the older studios. But for instance, we know that Rocksteady now has lost its leadership and its founder. So like, what is it to be a Rocksteady game after Justice League? Naughty Dog is one of those rare studios where the identity of the studio has gone through, in my opinion, 3 or 4 different iterations and has survived and actually gotten more and more impressive, but that's unlikely. And so I don't know how I feel about it or even what I want to say about this. Other than that, I've really been thinking about the ephemeral nature of teams. Like, maybe publishers should just accept that it's over. When you lose enough people, you don't have the team anymore. And there's really no other. Think about it in music. If your favorite band is a 5-piece and then 3 of them are different, that's not really the same band. And there are bands that I've gotten out of. Like, I used to really love the band Breaking Benjamin, like a alt rock kind of new metal band. And I liked their first 2 records a lot. And then they fired their drummer, and then they released another record. And then I think they fired ultimately their bassist and their guitarist. So it's just the singer with a whole new band. And I'm like, well, that's not Breaking Benjamin. And now I have no interest in you anymore because it's you. You might have been the songwriter and the primary performer, but it's not the band anymore. I've said in the past, it's like Sublime with Rome. It's like, well, no, there is no such thing as Sublime anymore.
Yeah.
Bradley Nowell's dead, so Sublime can't exist. Or when Alice in Chains tours, obviously as it has for decades now, without Lane Staley. It's like, I don't know about that. That's not really Alice in Chains. And so it's not really BioWare. I guess is what I'm saying. They're all gone, all of them. Anyone you would possibly associate, Drew Karpyshyn, Casey Hudson, like who's Mac Walters, they're all gone. And so maybe it's time for us to kind of acknowledge, or not us, but maybe publishers to play around with this idea of it's kind of what 2K and Take-Two did with Irrational. Not a terrible idea. It takes a long time to kind of get things going again, but Ghost Story is the remnants of Irrational. A lot of people that worked at Irrational work at Ghost Story. It's just that it's a new team doing something new that's kind of familiar and old, but they were able to do it unencumbered. And so I feel like BioWare's in that situation where there is no definition of what a BioWare game is. There is no such thing as that anymore. The BioWare that made BioWare games has been dead forever. Mass Effect 3, I think, would be the last game. And Dragon Age Inquisition, if you're a Dragon Age fan, sure. So 2014. Does that resonate with you at all? We don't ever talk about that. In other words, we talk about Sucker Punch like it's going to exist forever, but actually Sucker Punch has had the same people working there, like the same leadership. All the founders are there still. But what happens when they're gone? Is it Sucker Punch?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I feel like there may be some merit to companies that are able to instill a spirit or a culture, whatever you want to call it, those buzzwords, right? Where even though the founders or the people that were there that made something great aren't there anymore, that spirit is still able to be carried on. And I think a lot of times that sometimes you do see that happen, but it's not indefinite, right? That usually things do change and adapt. And so in the case, like I liked your band analogy, because it's so funny to think about like certain bands that I've liked that it's like there are no original members left.
Right.
So
like I'm so lucky that my favorite band is all original members still after 30 something years. That's so rare, And
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I feel very fortunate about that. And it does feel fake, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it does feel fake. And there are some, I think, exceptions where you could make about like, oh, well, they didn't get popular until they had this lineup. Like this is the lineup and whatever. We're getting the weeds on that. But the thing with companies, I mean, it's different just because they're made up of sometimes hundreds of people or even thousands of people. But when in the case of BioWare, it's like, what do you do? Because I mean, from a marketing perspective, if a game has BioWare on it, at one point that really meant something. And I think that even though, I mean, I mentioned about the tarnished name of BioWare, I still think that holds a marketing weight. And particularly if you have a BioWare game with one of their IPs attached to it, that's going to have eyes on it no matter what. And even if it would be the right thing to do to change the name of the studio or something like that, or have them do something different, a corporation like, and particularly EA isn't going to do that. They're not going to throw away the good grace or the momentum, I guess, from having those two things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's that's what I was saying. It's kind of an ill-formed idea I have right now, just because I can poke holes in it myself. But yeah, this notion of more ephemera and like people coming and going. I don't even look at bands as necessarily permanent. I think when bands last a long time, there's reasons why that happens. Creativity, friendship, money, whatever the case might be. And sometimes it's really impressive how long they exist. But when ultimately the band ends, ultimately the band is over. Like no matter what. And I wonder, is that true with all of the studios that we currently love? It has to be. Because then it suggests that there's something about the pipeline or something. I don't believe that. It's got to be like the creativity of it. One of my favorite bands to play drums to is Rage Against the Machine. I love playing I play Bulls on Parade all the time. It's a fucking banger. I can play it exactly the way it's played on the album, but I'm not in Rage Against the Machine. And if you put me on stage, it would probably sound pretty similar on the drums, but I'm not in Rage Against the Machine. So at that point, it's not Rage Against the Machine anymore. Doesn't matter even if you feel like you can know it. In other words, like I learned the pipeline and I listened to it and I got it like a studio musician, but it's not the same. And I think BioWare is a reminder of this, that we kind of look at studios. Publishers are permanent, in my opinion, or at least potentially permanent, because their moneyed interests production interests, creative interests come from the creators themselves. It's basically like saying you're going to have a Quentin Tarantino movie without Quentin Tarantino. There are no doubt probably 50 people that work for him over time that have made the movies what they are and have all worked together and collaborated together, but he is the linchpin.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know why I've never thought about this deeply, but I'm not until right now.
It's also, dude, it's extra funny too when you see like companies buy names and then try to like bring it back as if it's the same thing. What was the I mean, Atari kind of did this. Like they were like, "Oh yeah, we're making a new Atari." It's like, no, some new company is making a new Atari, or it was Amiga, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's
Recently?
Amiga. Yeah, it's like the guy. Yeah,
Oh
it's,
yeah,
Atari. Well, Atari is like in its like third iteration now, but yeah, Amiga
right.
was the one I think you're talking about with.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or yeah, there was something. First of all, I don't know why anyone would think that you would want that to begin with, but some of this stuff doesn't hold up over time. All right, number 2. In their recent quarterly financial filings, mega publisher Take-Two revealed cumulative sales data for 2 games that are so impressive we have to share them here on the show. In a transcript of Take-Two's earnings call, as relayed by market website The Motley Fool, Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick revealed that Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto V, first launched in 2013, has surpassed a stunning 175 million copies sold. This is more copies than every notable first-party exclusive released on PS4 and PS5 combined. Additionally, Zelnick shared that Red Dead Redemption 2, first launched in 2018, has surpassed 50 million units sold, especially impressive considering it's only on a single generation of hardware, while Grand Theft Auto 5 is available on 3. But even with these mega strong performances, Take-Two is actually reducing financial guidance in the next quarter, and as noted by website GamesIndustry.biz, while their back catalog of games is strong, I can't read. Recent games have financially flopped, including Midnight Suns, PGA Tour 2K23, which they bought the studio outright that did that, and the seemingly ignored New Tales from the Borderlands, which seems to have been played by virtually no one. In search of $50 million in annual cuts throughout their organization, which includes 2K, Rockstar, Private Division, and more, layoffs are inevitable, though it's unclear from where they intend on cutting. Other major non-annualized or evergreen games Take-Two has in development include a new BioShock, a new Mafia, and Ken Levine's Judas, among others. Now, Grand Theft Auto 5 came out in 2013 on PS3, and it was $60. And it came out on PS4, and then now it's on PS5. And you can get it now for $15. I'm going to split the difference conservatively and say the average game cost $30 at this point from launch to now. 175 million times 30. $5.2 billion. Around there, I would imagine Grand Theft Auto 5 is made. That's insane. I mean, Fortnite makes more than that in 2 years, but it's different. And wondering what you think about that. That's an enormous amount of capital.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And it makes sense just from the perspective of, you mentioned about platforms. I'm thinking for me, I bought it on Xbox 360 when it came out. I bought it again on PlayStation 4, and I bought it a third time on PC. I didn't get the PS5 version though. So there you go. And I'm sure that this is the case for many, many people, that they have bought it and they buy it again and again. And yeah, it makes sense. I don't know. It's one of those games that's just so, like, everyone's played GTA 5. I don't know. Like the people that you talk to that are only mildly into games, like, oh, you do a gaming podcast. Have you played GTA 5? Like, that's the game that seems like is the unifier for all. But the other thing that was interesting to me, Colin, that kind of continues our last conversation with 2K right now, is that they're kind of in the same thing with BioWare, only we're not seeing it necessarily. We haven't seen it play out, because what is a Grand Theft Auto game without Dan Houser?
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know.
What's a BioShock game without Ken Levine?
Right.
Back to back.
Is Judas a BioShock game? That's my big question.
Is Judas a BioShock game? So
just looks like it. No, these are valid questions. I am less concerned about GTA 6 because my suspicion is that they must have already written it, right? Or at least we'll know in the credits, obviously. I mean, whenever the game comes out in 2025 or something, but they might have had something to do with it. So, or, and specifically, we don't know that Dan Houser's new company, which I think is in Maryland, or at least incorporated there. I don't think we've heard anything from them. But yeah, there is that question, certainly. And I don't know, from a high end, I don't know, man. This game, Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be fucking huge. Huge. And it cannot be understated how many copies that game is going to sell and how much money they're going to make on that game. I mean, I suspect when GTA 6 comes out, at launch will sell tens of millions of copies, which is just unheard of, just completely unheard of. And I can't wait to see what it is. I can't wait to see what it looks like. I can't wait to see what their plan is for it, what its functionality is, single player, multiplayer, shared worlds, whatever the case might be, big maps. I don't know, but I can't even imagine. And they've done a pretty nice job of keeping it secret. Oh, things have obviously leaked, and they've also teased things about it intentionally, but it's pretty surprising. Much more had leaked about Red Dead Redemption 2 than this.
Yeah.
And including, I think Red Dead's whole map leaked like a few years before the game came out, I recall. But I didn't look at it, but it was there.
Rockstar is such a puzzling company to me in a lot of ways. It's one of those situations where clearly they understand how to make a successful product seemingly more than I do. But at the same time, it's like, dude, why did you totally shit out these terrible remasters and not do it the right way? Because you would have made so much money. But I guess the argument is that they probably did make a lot of money anyway. And then the other thing is, you mentioned in the write-up about Red Dead Redemption 2. Why not put those on PS5 and Xbox? Why not? You don't even have to do an upgrade. You can just charge full price, $70. Do it again. I'm not saying I like that, but I'm from a business perspective, from a 2K Rockstar perspective, you could easily do that and make so much money.
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't know. It's been like 4 years, right?
Well, 18, I think there was
20, 21, 20, yeah, about 4 years. What? Yeah. I'm sorry.
I think there was a rumor that they wanted to do it, and then they got scared off by the reception to the definitive edition of the GTA games.
Well, I think the rumor was more about GTA 4 and the original Red Dead Redemption, right? As well. Like they wanted to do those. Because the game that most urgently needs it is GTA 4. Yeah. Because I haven't beaten GTA 5, and I always think about going and playing it again. I haven't played it since the PS3 version. But GTA 4 is an amazing game. And it's just kind of sad that it's just stranded for people on PlayStation on old hardware. It's like the forgotten Grand Theft Auto game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, no one gives a shit about 1 and 2 either, but 3, Vice City and San Andreas, well remembered. GTA 5 still current. GTA 4 is kind of the one lost.
Right.
And it could be the best one, I think.
Yeah, that's one I need to go back to at some point. But they're just such a strange, they almost remind me of Nintendo in that there are obvious things that we feel like they should do and they just don't. But again, clearly they don't need to necessarily listen to what people want them to do, because when they release GTA 6, nothing else matters at that point for what they release, because it'll make so much money.
Oh yeah, it's going to mint money. All right, number 3 is our final one. This is a small one, but I wanted to give it a note here. There was a time in the not too distant past when Japanese developer Q Games was in a comfy and regular second-party relationship with PlayStation. The enigmatic team has made a lot of games, but the PixelJunk franchise is their most iconic offering. Beginning with PixelJunk Racers on the PS3 way back in 2007, 7 PixelJunk games launched across PS3, PS4, Vita, and PSP. Monsters and Eden in 2008, Shooter in 2009, Shooter 2 and Side Scroller in 2011, and 4 AM in 2012. There were a sprinkle of other games in there too, including for DSi and PSP, and Q Games would later go on to release Nom Nom Galaxy in 2015 on PS4, and then, finally, their strange Soviet-inspired game, The Tomorrow Children, in 2016. Now, here's where things get interesting. The Tomorrow Children ultimately failed and went offline the next year, and though PixelJunk Monsters 2 would launch in 2018 on PS4, Q Games essentially stopped working with PlayStation for an extended period. A major partner for them would be Apple Arcade, though they brought various PixelJunk games to other platforms like Eden 2 in 2020 and Raiders in 2021, which was a Stadia exclusive. When The Tomorrow Children was revived on PS4 and PS5 last year, it seems to have perhaps softened their relationship once more. And that brings us to PixelJunk Scrappers Deluxe. Announced as a PC game last summer and already on Apple Arcade, Scrappers has been confirmed for a launch on both PS4 and PS5 later this year and marks PixelJunk's fresh foray onto a PlayStation console since 2012. According to a write-up shared by website Gamatsu, quote, "In PixelJunk Scrappers, clean up the streets of Junktown and trash anyone who gets in your way. Take on the role of the Scrappers, a squad of robot garbage collectors working to clean up the grimy city in a not-so-distant future," end quote. Its release date is unknown. And this is, of course, on the news that The Tomorrow Children has been re-released on PS4 and PS5. You can download it now if you're interested in a more offline function. Are you a PixelJunk guy? This was at one time a mainstay. This was a big series on PlayStation. And in fact, I interviewed some of the guys from Q Games on Sacred Symbols Plus, and Dylan specifically was telling me that they didn't. I always thought that PlayStation owned PixelJunk, the franchise, but they don't. And so they were able to do whatever they wanted with it. And I was like, that's so strange because they never let anyone do that. I don't know why they liked Q Games enough to just let them keep their IP, but there's something special about them. But nonetheless, I'm a big old school PixelJunk fan, and I'm glad to see the franchise return. It's been a long time.
So here's what I don't understand. What does it mean to be a PixelJunk game?
It's just it's a sub-series of Q Games, and each game is different unless it's a numbered sequel. So it's just about like kind of whimsy. So side scrollers, like a side scrolling shooter. 4 a.m. is like a party visualizer. Monsters, I think, was a tower defense game, and so on and so on and so on. And so the idea is to just kind of give playable, stylish experiences to players. That was the whole idea. And so it was PixelJunk was the series.
Like, to me, it almost feels like PixelJunk should just be the name of their company or something. Like, I guess they make other stuff too.
Yeah, they made a Star Fox game and a bunch of other stuff back in the day. But.
Right. I've never understood, because I was looking at this game and I was remembering a few years back, I guess it was 2018. I'm looking at their Wikipedia, but PixelJunk Monsters 2, which came out. It's like I was trying to figure out what the connective thread, what makes a PixelJunk game PixelJunk. But either way, I was curious about this game. I saw that it was Apple Arcade, which I have Apple Arcade just because I have that Apple subscription service that gives you everything, but I don't really play anything on it. But yeah, this looks cool. I'm glad that they were able to clearly work something out with Sony. But I don't know. Does this appeal to you though, Colin? Because this looks like a multiplayer game.
No, I don't think it's for me. Some of the games weren't for me. 4 a.m. I didn't like. But some, and Eden I wasn't crazy about. But some of them I really loved. Like I loved PixelJunk Shooter, especially. I thought those games were fucking awesome. And so yeah, there's a lot to love, but people should go check them out if they're not familiar with them. But if you're a PS3 person, you will definitely remember. And PSP too. They were on PSP as well. And PS4 and Vita, but not so much. Okay. That's all we have for the news this week. We're going fast because Chris isn't here, so we don't have a third person to talk to. So let's get into listener inquiries. We end each episode with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from you, the audience. You submit them on the weekly threads posted on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. I go through them and decide who I want to talk to. Jose A. Contra Raz wrote into us and said, "Hi, guys. I have been questioning a lot of things lately from everything media, and the latest one is the Hogwarts game. Were we deceived into supporting this game? Maybe it didn't start like it at first, but something doesn't feel right in my gut. It feels like the PR was anti-cancel culture, and they ran with it. Is this the new blueprint for selling games in the future? The reason I ask is because lots of people are buying this game to support anti-cancel. Am I wrong? What do you think of this idea? We've talked about this in the past on the show, and I was specifically focused in on it with Kingdom Come Deliverance, which when that game was being, dragged through the muck, it was obvious that Deep Silver was leaning into it. And the result was, and not leaning into it even so actively, but by just not really kowtowing, not giving interviews to those outlets and kind of just withholding certain people from being able to play the game. And the result was a game that sold several million copies in a studio that was sold for millions of dollars. So it was a great success. And I said ever since then that very similar to politics, like on the right, especially, you use the media against itself and you use it as a foil. And so why wouldn't you have a PR plan and a marketing plan that would take advantage of that very same thing? It seems to me that Hogwarts Legacy, and it seems like WB was a canny operator and who got codes and who got access. And I saw people complaining and people bringing up a lot of other outlets complaining about not getting access to the game after they spent all this time shitting all over it. It's like, you don't deserve anything. I mean, no one's owed anything. And so I do wonder what's going to happen in the Metacritic score over time, but I think that it was a very smart move and clearly it worked in their favor. What did you think about this? You think Jose's right that WB was playing the anti-cancel culture with the PR by basically just being fastidious in who got a code and who didn't?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that is a bit conspiratorial because this happens with other games that don't have any kind of I don't know, social slant. I don't know what you want to call it exactly, but there are other instances where PR will not give codes to someone who has someone that whether it is true or unjust, thinking that they won't give it a good score. They just won't give them a review code. And I think that sometimes that, like I said, that can make sense. Other times I think it's unfair that PR will do that. But like you said, no one is owed a code. But in this game specifically, I can't think of any instance where it's felt like, wow, they're kind of leaning into this aspect. It's like, yeah, they made sure that, like you said, and dude, I can't believe some of the stupid shit that I was seeing about outlets that didn't get this game. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like, shocked Pikachu face. Exactly. Like, are you kidding me? Do you really think that the PR thought that you were going to be a fair arbiter on whether or not people thought this game was good, whether you should tell people that this game is good or not? Give me a break. Like, just absolutely ridiculous. But in this case, I don't think PR did anything. And it's like, I think that PR fully knows that they have a lot of people that are putting that angle on it. In fact, and I think, I don't know, to me, it's a little bit, I don't want to say it's stupid, because this, I think, goes back, it's the opposite of what I said earlier. If you feel convicted that you should support this game because of some belief you have, then go ahead, do it. You know what I mean? I don't, it's not something that I would do personally, but whatever. That's the glorious part of the freedom aspect of it, is that you can support things in the way you want to. So yeah, I'm sure that they were fully aware that there were people doing that, but it's not like they were like egging on anybody or trying to give special attention to people that they thought would give it a good score. I mean, it seemed pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, I was going to use the exact same term. I mean, I agree. I don't necessarily like PR and publishers playing fast and loose with that kind of stuff. But as long as there's some sort of consistency to it about why outlets are or aren't getting things, and when it's clear that the product's not going to be treated fairly or hasn't been treated fairly. I mean, what do you do when you're a WB PR person and you have to defend against J.K. Rowling being accused of things that aren't even true? I mean, what do you even do about that? I don't know. I think that this is a very complicated situation. I'm sure Warner Brothers is thrilled with how the game is doing, but the one thing about the anti-cancel culture stuff is that at its core, like, I kind of agree that the whole fighting back by buying the game is a little cringy. That's why I kind of backed off of my own, like, I'm going to buy a few copies and give them away to people. I'm like, okay, maybe that's not enough because I'm just going to operate on an individual basis and buy the game and show my support that way. But that seems to be a reasonable way for people to show support of the game, is to just buy it. Yeah. What else are you supposed to do? It's what I said earlier. If that's not a reasonable response to the so-called cancel culture, in quotes, going on around this game, then what is the rational response or antithesis to that? That's the only option. I mean, that's actually what's funny is that it's the only option, and it's the option that is worse for the other side, because it's like it's W doesn't give a shit as long as they're making money. They can give a fuck. It's the same thing with J.K. Rowling's publishers when they were basically like, when they had a little bit of an uprising with their people, and well, you can leave if you want, but we don't care. We're going to do this and we're going to make money and whatever. So, yeah, I don't know. Is it the blueprint, as he says? No, but I think that this is something that should be leaned into when the product calls for it. If you feel like the product, if you're a marketer or a PR person, what's a good example? I don't even know. There doesn't even have to be a good example. If you are just a marketing or PR person and your game is controversial or being treated in a certain way because of the subject matter or its character or whatever, I think you kind of just have to go with it and just see what happens. But that's not going to be most cases, because most games are not going to have this level of controversy, earned or unearned, surrounding it. And I'm kind of excited to just get past it ultimately and talk about it, as we said earlier, as a game.
Right. I got to point out too, Colin, and I was curious if you saw anything about it. It's just the copium around the review score. I saw so many takes that I couldn't believe from certain people saying like even people accusing IGN of giving it a more positive review score than it deserved. People nitpicking and breaking things down that they would never do for anything else. It's like, is it possible that maybe just the game is pretty good? Couldn't that also be the solution?
It's always looked good. Like, that's the thing is, first of all, there's just a lot of ignorance about Avalanche. I was saying that from the beginning. I'm like, I don't know why people are talking about Avalanche like they can't make a game. They made a pretty popular game as a service with a big brand. They were owned by Disney. They were a decent studio. They made what they were asked to make. But this idea that they weren't capable of making this game, I think, was silly, especially considering how much time they had. So, yeah, it's there's a lot of this. This whole thing is blowing up in people's faces, and it's great. I mean, it's richly deserved, of course. But you know what's next up, of course.
Dude, yeah, here we go. Round 2.
Atomic
Just a few
Hearts,
weeks away.
Yeah, is going to be the next target. There was actually a guy that put out a video. I didn't watch all of it. I think he's Ukrainian, about why people shouldn't buy the game, but I couldn't find contact information for him, but I wanted to have him on. I'd love to have that conversation. But yeah, Atomic Hearts is going to be the next game to be attacked. So prepare and steel yourself. Gird your loins. Danny Garcia wrote in and said, hello, gentlemen. With the announcement that Ken Levine's next game, Judas, is planned to release by March 2025, can we have a discussion on when it's too early to announce games? Personally, showing a game off years in advance makes me way less excited for it. Nowadays, every major release is almost guaranteed for a delay, so what's the benefit of showing it so early? Am I simply being cynical, or should I just be happy that it's coming? No, I don't think there's anything wrong with being cynical. I mean, the thing about this particular game is that, so you're getting this information from the Take-Two financials, which we cited earlier when we were talking about GTA 5 and Red Dead. And in there, they say that Judas will come out by the end of fiscal year 2024, I think, which puts it in that March 2025 range by March 2025. But I don't think that that's what it necessarily means. I think what they're saying is it's coming out maybe next spring or next summer, which is further away than I thought. But I never thought it was coming out this year, because I think they would have said so. And again, I don't like talking about this game, because I talk about this game. I know about it behind the scenes, and I know people are interested in it, but I got to make sure to keep my wires straight about what's what. So I want to be careful about that. So let me throw it over to you about Judas and what you think about announcing games too early, because I think Danny is onto something here, but I wouldn't read too deeply into the financial statement. I think they're just being vague.
Yeah, I think you're right in that I don't necessarily read that we'll be playing this in March 2025, but I think there is something to be said that it is really annoying when games get announced too early, and it's to the point where sometimes you get tired of hearing about it. And I've thought before that maybe this is just more of a problem with us, because we are watching everything going on in the industry, right? And so we see everything. And so if we're seeing another new trailer, I'm like, yeah, it's annoying for us, but for people on the outside of our bubble, maybe they only see one trailer and it's the third trailer or something that got posted to YouTube and it hit their algorithm that day, right? So I don't know. It can be annoying. For me, I don't know. What is the perfect lead up for a game? Like 1 year? Maybe you hear about it and then a year later you're playing it. Is that kind of the perfect medium?
Yeah, I would say even less. I would say a year max. Like what I noted earlier. I think that's perfect. As a year max, 6 months or less would be even better. I think it depends on your game, your ability to market. If you're a smaller game, you don't gain anything from keeping it close to the vest. But if you're a bigger game, that doesn't rely so much on that. I mean, the bigger the studio and the more well-known the potential product, the more likely I think it would be that it would be even stealth released. Like those are the kinds of studios that can get away with it. It's all about what your needs are, I think.
Right.
All right. Let's go to the next question. Let's see here. Greg Hanley wrote in, said, greetings from Ireland, sacred men. Colin, This one is mainly for you. Recently, I've started to take on a fondness for getting a few platinum trophies. I've always been very completionist in general, but not always until the point of platinum until recent times. I was playing through Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion lately with the hopes of setting out for the platinum. However, after learning the very missable nature of many trophies and the insane amount of time required on largely repetitive side missions, I have decided to bail on it and enjoy the game to its standard completion. I must say I felt relieved, and maybe will start to question and challenge my future endeavors for platinum trophies that they feel laborious. The question for you, Colin, is do you have a point at which you decide a platinum just isn't worth it? Whether it's difficulty overly time-consuming or if you find it taking away from your enjoyment of the game itself. Thank you for all for providing hours and hours of top-tier content every single week. It's funny because my answer to this actually vacillates and changes depending on when you ask me. There are moments where trophies, like I always loved trophies, and I have since they came out in 2008. But they have come and go as far as like being very important or like a driver of gaming to being something that I think has fallen much more comfortably where it is now, which is that it's this meta game that goes alongside games I want to play. And so when a game really, like, let's use a first party game of some repute, a Last of Us, a Ghost of Tsushima, I would play those regardless of the trophies. And in fact, I don't even care. When I played The Last of Us Part 2 the first time, I didn't even care at all about the trophies. So games can become good enough where I'm like, I don't care. I'll worry about it later. And did I know you had to beat it again to get the platinum trophy? Yes. So I knew that I would have a chance to do it again. But it really depends on the game. And what I've found as I've gotten older is that I am more likely to get platinums and play fewer games now than I was when I was younger and was really jumping around. And have challenged myself on some pretty big platinums lately. Like the Evil West platinum was not easy. And I did it. And I was really proud of it. But I really have gotten in, and playing Dead Space now for the third time on this particular remake version, I'm like really getting familiar with games. I'm in this mode right now that I don't think will last forever, obviously, where I'm just really getting everything and being very deliberate. But I'll be broken out of that spell at some point, and then I'll find myself back in that spell again after that. But I typically go into games knowing one way or the other. Like when Resident Evil 4 comes out, I'm probably not even going to bother because I just know what Resident Evil games are like. They're hard. You have to play them a bunch of times. And I don't really want to do that. It was the same thing when RE2 and RE3 remakes came out. I just didn't even bother with those trophies. So I was just like, that doesn't matter. So you have to, and again, I'll recommend to people PowerPix, powerpyx.com, excellent website, and psnprofiles.com. These are excellent websites where there are roadmaps and trophy guides that will give you all the information you need in a spoiler-free way so that you understand what you're getting into. This is how long it would take. This is how many playthroughs. These are missable trophies, and so on and so forth. And it's funny you brought up Final Fantasy Crisis Core because I felt like there are a shit ton of missable trophies in that game, but they're all so easy to get if you just pay attention to what you need to do to get them. Because they're all found in specific chapters, but you could have just followed a very spoiler-free walkthrough to just tell you what to do. But I understand some people don't want to do that. The other thing is that there is no real completion in Crisis Core because of the 100% rating. So you're trying to kind of get to that. So it just might not be the game for you. But that's my answer to that.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, the only bit of feedback, I guess, that I'll put in here for Greg is that it's funny, Colin, because you had mentioned that you, as you've gotten older, you've wanted to really focus in on a few games. And I've actually been the opposite. And I don't think that there's any better way to choose how you focus in on games. And that something that's always been funny to me and something that we've joked about is about this idea of like gamer credentials, like how many platinum trophies
what are your
you
credentials?
have. Yeah, what are your gamer credentials? And like to me, it's much more satisfying if I can make a list and see how many games I completed in a given time, whether it's a month or a year, then look and see how many games I have platinums in. And I don't think that's any better or worse than what Colin does with having a smaller amount of games that he really put time into. It just really comes down to how you enjoy games and how you want to do it. So if you're finding right now that you're enjoying games by not focusing on trophies and you're letting that part of yourself go, then do it. There's no reason to feel, if you feel relieved, then I feel like your answer is before you that it's maybe the trophy hunt, it's time to put it away. Gaming is about fun. So if you're having fun getting trophies, do it. If you find relief in not having to go after trophies, then definitely don't do it because gaming is meant to be fun.
Yeah, and I also say that the one thing I resent is people trying to tell me how to play games, like that I'm playing them wrong or whatever by caring about those things. And I'm like, I think everyone just needs to focus a little bit more on the way they play games. I'll tell you this, getting platinum trophies in these games means I see them much more completely. I'm seeing them much longer periods of time. I don't think there's any proper or improper way to play if the option is there. So you have to do what you need to do. Trevor Treebeard wrote in, said, "Hey, gents. I often hear Colin and others make the argument that if a game is old enough, then someone has no excuse for not having played it because they've had ample time to do so, and therefore there's no reason to tiptoe around spoilers for their benefit. While I agree that in general, the older an IP, the less spoiler protection it deserves, I think Colin forgets that a lot of his audience is younger than he is. Imagine a 16-year-old who is just starting to play mature games and started listening to podcasts. He legitimately may have never had time to finish The Last of Us, for example. Should he not have some consideration? Realistically, he will never catch up with all the amazing games and movies that have come out to this point, try though he might. Just a reminder that the young ones are among us. Cheers." Yeah, this is fair enough, but I still... Well, how do you feel about this, Dustin? I don't know. I mean, there's no doubt that there's an element of truth to that. But we can't be restrained forever by not being able to talk about games in a more meaningful and deep way with a shared language surrounding them. And so I think that there are just certain things where it's like you got to have known that this had happened. Or it's like, the example I would use is a kid getting into Star Wars today. Is anyone getting into Star Wars today not knowing that Darth Vader is Luke's father? Like, that's the whole point. It's like, does it even matter at that point? You're just getting into it. You're late. You know you're late. It's your moment has come and gone. That's just the nature of it. I feel like there's some element of that too.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring up the Star Wars Darth Vader thing. I don't remember finding out that Darth Vader was Luke's father. I just always knew because I grew up with Star Wars. So there are certain things that I think do transcend the idea of a spoiler. Like, it's just common knowledge. And we talked about that earlier with Final Fantasy VII, which I guess we'll just not say again, or not bring it up again. Yeah.
Everyone knows what the Final Fantasy VII spoiler is by just saying the Final Fantasy VII spoiler. So yes, I mean, that's the whole point. We don't even need to reiterate it. Yeah.
I knew about that spoiler when I was in elementary school, years and years and years before I ever played it, because it was just common knowledge. But I think he's right, though, in that there are spoilers. We'll say like we can call it the Vader spoiler, right? There are spoilers that go beyond the game and become common knowledge, and I think that those we need to just let go. But I think he's totally right about a 16-year-old right now that is maybe playing Last of Us for the first time. I think that there's some of that even between you and I, Colin, with some of these really old RPGs, stuff like Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger. Like, I guess it's particularly hard for me because there are some of these games that were before my time, and particularly now where I'm trying to keep up with current games. It's like, when am I going to figure out how to fit that in as well? And it's like, I have been able to manage to fit some stuff in, but as time goes on, there's just more and more games that we consider essential, right? Like essential must play games. And it's only going to get more and more and more and more. Right. So I think it is true that we should be sensitive to those types of things in order to let people find things out on their own.
Yeah, I'm compelled by this because it is interesting, but I guess the whole argument is then generationally, it's like you're coming in at a different moment. I'll give you an example. We were talking about Final Fantasy VII. I played Final Fantasy VII when it was new. I got it the day it came out. It wasn't spoiled for me. I was in 8th grade. I experienced the moment without it being spoiled. But that's like a place and time sort of thing too. After a while, it becomes part of the nomenclature and becomes part of the shared knowledge and becomes part of what compels younger people to go in and play the game to begin with. And so there is some sort of mixed element. I think the one thing that we can say, though, for sure on this show, and I know this for a fact because not only have I had things edited out that other people have said, but have checked myself many times too, is that I really try not to spoil things on this show.
Yeah.
There are certain things that I think are okay to discuss. And I'm still loath to even say what happens at the beginning of The Last of Us. I'm still loath to say what happens in The Last of Us Part 2, even though everyone knows. Because that's kind of like up for you to figure out. But then it does bring up this contradiction of like, okay, so like the Vader father thing. All this other stuff. Or like, Is anyone watching The Terminator not knowing what The Terminator is about today? Is that even possible? Would that like to not understand what happens with the Terminator over time? Because that's like part of, the first Terminator is a very final movie, but you damn well know going into it now that it's not. So is that like an inherent ruination of it for you? Or do you just go into it with your current generation's knowledge or forethought of the product inherent to that time? It's a little philosophical, but I don't know. I just, I'm sorry. Good.
Well, it is funny. I'm just thinking of other examples in movies. Like it became a joke about spoiling The Sixth Sense.
Oh yeah. That's
just because it was such a crazy twist, and then it became like this thing where I think there was like a joke in the show Scrubs where they just spoil it. And you're right that that is the question is like, should we? It's like, well, you weren't there when it happened, so sorry.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, The Sixth Sense is a great example because like is it even possible to not know what happened in The Sixth Sense at this point?
I think kids now that's not part of pop culture really anymore.
And another example I was thinking too is the Blair Witch Project, just because, and we've talked about that in the past, but just because the marketing around it was supposed to be like, it was supposed to be real. And we kind of thought it was. I mean, I think people were like, I never thought it was and stuff like that. But I'm like, no, I think a lot of people were pretty convinced by it, especially in that early internet era. It was very scary and weird. But that was a time and place thing. There's no way that you go into it thinking it's found footage today. There's just not possible. Yeah. Like what? You have this video of all these kids getting murdered. It's like a snuff film and it's being sold for 25 years. At some point, it's just common sense. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. Thank you for writing in, Trevor. Magro Crag wrote in. It said, greetings, CDC. I greatly enjoyed the conversation around Colin's use of the money glitch in Dead Space and was hoping the gang could sound off on one of PlayStation's most controversial trophy lists, Nier Automatas. To date, this is the only game I've ever seen that allows you to unlock trophies using the in-game currency. After getting all the endings, I used this method to earn the platinum and save myself the trouble of grinding out the tedious trophies like riding an animal for 5 kilometers and catching 20 kinds of fish. Over the years, I've justified it to myself because it's a system designed and included in the game, but am I living a lie? Do I need to come clean to my wife and daughter? A verdict on this decision would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for all the content, and remember, the chicken isn't a lie if you believe in it. Thank you, Magro Crag, for writing in. This is one of the most notorious trophy lists of all time, and it comes up every so often on this show. I never played it all the way through to be able to see, but at some point in Nier Automata that you gain access to a store where you can buy trophies. And I've never seen anything like this, but I don't hate it because it's part of the game. If everyone has access to it, it's not like you have to do something special. You're not glitching or breaking the game. It's not like I brought up that I had Dead Rising 2 at IGN with where I could have popped all the trophies in the debug menu in like 2 seconds. And I'm like, I can't do that. That's cheating because not everyone has access to it. Did you notice that at the time when you played it, being such a big fan of the game? And do you care?
Yeah, I used it. So I have the Nier Automata Platinum because of that. But it's one of those things that you're talking about access. And I think this comes back to what we were saying earlier about your view on what a trophy means. Because if you're, I don't know, obviously there's lots of people that get trophies because they feel like they're able to have a big dick about it. It's like, oh, well, I've got the Nier Automata Platinum. And then someone's like, oh, well, it doesn't really mean anything because they can just buy the trophies. It's like, who cares? I don't know. It's one of those things where I can understand where someone would say like, oh, well, I don't care about getting the platinum if you can just get it by in-game currency. It's like, okay, well, I don't really care that you can either, but on the other way, so I'm just going to use it. I don't know. It's one of those things that's like live and let live, in my opinion. I think it's a neat idea, though, especially it would be interesting to see a more limited version of it where instead it's like not every trophy, but it's just certain ones that are particularly grindy and they would be really hard to buy, like really expensive. So it's like, okay, well, you can maybe get rid of 2 trophies that you really don't want to do. Like if you don't want to have to catch all the fish, then you'll be able to do that. Maybe you get a token in the game.
I like that idea. Yeah, that's a great idea.
That's
interesting. It's actually a great idea for games with missable trophies too, where it's like, we're going to give you an opportunity. You miss 1 or 2 things. I wish they did that with social links in fucking Persona. I wanted to kill myself when I missed getting all the social links in Persona 4. I was fucking furious when I did that. Put so much time just with my little notes, like for fucking weeks writing and all this. Oh my God, what a fucking disaster. But I do wonder if Square Enix got feedback about that from Sony because it's on Xbox too. So it could conceivably be from Microsoft where that was verboten because it just seems weird. And it does because we've never seen it again. As far as I can tell, I think that's the only game that you can do that in. So yeah, I don't know what that's all about, but it is an interesting one. And yeah, I love what you said though. There is this cool idea of having this like fail safe so you don't lose your mind. Like you said, like maybe you only get one or two.
Yeah. Like if there's a game that had New Game Plus, like let's say Dead Space, for example, every time you beat the game, you get a trophy token. You can get rid of one trophy.
Yeah, that's hot. I like that.
Yeah,
that's hot.
That's interesting. You can use that. Lilimo, hit me up. You can use that idea.
Maybe we will. Final one comes from Zaymar, who says, "Hey CDC, what are your thoughts on children named after video games? I have an 18-month-old daughter who my wife and I named after a PlayStation character, Ellie. With the announcement I'm having a son, is it simply the right thing to do to name my son Joel? Please do give your thoughts on this one and this one in a lifetime opportunity. Thanks, guys, and keep collecting that chicken." Thank you, Zaymar, for writing in. I don't mind people naming their kids after video game characters. I just think that that's too on the nose. I think you have your kid named. I think you have your kid named after the video game character in Ellie. So, what is there something else you love? You know, yeah. that's where my mind would be. I have a bunch of video game names. So I always had this idea if I had twins that I think it would be hysterical to name them Porum and Palom, who are the twin mages in Final Fantasy IV. It's horrible names, obviously, but that was like just trying to kind of use it. And then obviously I named my dogs after Mega Man characters and Rush and Treble. But Joel and Ellie are so like Rush and Treble are not iconic characters, especially Treble. I don't think anyone even knows who Treble is in Mega Man, or very few people do. But Ellie and Joel are iconic, and you're reintroduced. To me, it's kind of, you're like playing around with the order. They're coming out, they're going to be the wrong ages. They're going to be related to each other. Literally, it's exactly the opposite of what the shows are, the games are about. And you have your Ellie. So I think it would lessen the resonance of the name if you then name the son Joel. If you love something, have a family name or another game you love or another hobby or something or a show or a movie, I would use this opportunity to get another of your beloved whatever in there. That's my opinion. What do you think?
I would be very hesitant to name my kid after a story that is ongoing. This is like the Game of Thrones thing that happened. You know, like Ellie, first of all, arguably has done a lot of bad shit, and maybe if there's a Last of Us Part 3, you never know what she's going to do. She could go genocidal or something like that. She could really end up being a really bad person that you maybe don't want your kid named after. So I would be hesitant about that. But I do think it could be still done and be fun. I mean, I don't have a kid, but my dog is named after a video game character in Frisk from Undertale. So yeah, I mean, why not? If the story's done, you know what's going on, then go for it. Why not? But okay, as far as this Joel and Ellie situation, absolutely not. Absolutely not. For all the reasons that Colin listed, and also, I mean, it just kind of comes off as a little cringy to me.
Yeah, I agree. It
just feels cringy.
I agree. Totally. It's too much. Like you've shown, I love The Last of Us as much as anyone. And in my opinion, you've shown your love now. And Joel, I don't know about that. Like, it's unclear who Joel really is, in my opinion. Ellie, I have no problem with that. I think Ellie is the good guy. She's the victim, in my opinion. We don't have to get into this. I can't fucking talk about this anymore. The Last of Us. But I really think that naming a kid, it's your opportunity to flex a familial muscle, flex something like a book, or like my sister Allie named her kid Ayla, who's the main character in Clan of the Cave Bear. When people know that book series. It's like a fantasy book series about like cavemen, basically. And I think it's like Cro-Magnon's meeting, or no, I think it's Neanderthals taking care of a Cro-Magnon baby or something like that. Anyway, the main character is Ayla. It's from the 70s, I think, or the 60s. And so like that's a little ode. It's a little nice touch, but you don't necessarily know that. You wouldn't know that or even assume that. And that's why I like about the name Ellie. And you can get that out of Joel too, but you've already used it. It's again, you have to love something else other than The Last of Us. Even if it's another PlayStation game, name your son Ratchet.
Yeah. Name him Jim.
Jim. Yeah, name him Jim Ryan.
Current father. Yeah. All right. PlayStation.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we have. This is going to be a short episode. Probably one of the shortest ones we've done in a long time. But that's all we have.
Not a lot going on right now. It's a little quiet.
Yeah, it is. And Chris isn't here, so there's one fewer person to hear from. But you have any closing comments before we skedaddle?
Yeah, I have one closing comment. A few days ago, earlier this week, I had the honor of being able to talk before a high school recording class about Last Stand Media. It was super cool. And so shout out to Mr. Shadburn's class.
What did you talk about?
So it was a lot of podcast producing, like some nitty gritty as far as like how we produce episodes and what my schedule is like and stuff like that. And then just, they had some anime questions for me. They saw my One Piece flag in the background. So that was...
Oh, you did it over video. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, over video. So it was pretty fun. They were a pretty cool group of kids. And apparently what he told me was he had shown them a clip and it was the toothbrushing clip. And I was like, oh no, it's a pretty bold move.
Yeah.
To show that move to the class, but I appreciated it. I mean, that was...
Yeah, it's better than my sister is an English teacher in high school, and she teaches a podcast unit every year, and she doesn't use me at all.
Yeah,
I'm just a professional podcaster, and I've made a couple companies about it. It's no big deal, but I don't know anything about it. So, but I'm glad you did that. Was it recorded?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
But it was really cool. So lots of fun. Thanks for having me. One of the students asked for a shout out, and I was already thinking about doing it anyway. So shout out.
All right. Well, we appreciate all of you. I have no closing comments. I'm tired. I gotta say, man, like just on a personal note, my anxiety is getting so bad. Like, it sucks. I'm seeing someone again. I'm like trying to figure things out, but it's like, it's making me unable to really effectively rest well, So I hope to get that under control, but it'll be good to have Ramon here this weekend. Super Bowl is this weekend for when we're recording, so that'll be fun.
I forgot about that. And
and then coming in hot next week with I can't wait to just get into Hogwarts and dude, Octopath Traveler comes out, like we said, PSVR 2, Atomic Heart. We got a lot of things coming in hot. So we'll be covering all that and more here on Sacred Symbols. We appreciate you. Chris will be back next week unless something happens to him in the interim. I don't know. You never know. Dominic Rice and Bean.
You never know.
Dominic Rice and Bean. Is it what? Right? That was the name you went? That's good.
That was the name.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for your love and kindness. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.